Chapter 241. The Test of the Old Human Emperor. Gigi and Yu Yin were both feeling rather troubled recently. Yu Yin invited Gigi to visit the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty, and Gigi accepted happily. The two of them had a very pleasant conversation in front of the Minister of Rites from the Zhou dynasty and the accompanying minister from the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty, and they reached several agreements. From establishing trade cities on the border to signing a peace treaty concerning military matters, these agreements were of great benefit to both sides. The ministers from both sides were all smiles at the sight. The Zhou dynasty and the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty were neighboring empires. During the previous rule of the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty, relations had not been very good. The Zhou dynasty saw the other as a group of barbarians who knew only how to rule by force, while the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty dismissed the other as hypocritical, claiming to uphold justice and fairness, but in reality, trumpeting empty morality. The principles of ruling the country for the two sides were fundamentally different. The relationship between the two countries only began to improve during Yu Yin's reign. The legal system of the Zhou dynasty was unique among the 9 provinces, and did not fit in with the general atmosphere. People couldn't comprehend the reason why the law and the fate of the nation would be linked together, as this did not match with the belief that one should pursue their own path of cultivation, regardless of the catastrophic consequences that may follow. This was the keynote set by the former Zhou emperor, Emperor Shun. Even the Zhou dynasty itself did not understand why. People said that Emperor Shun saw into the future, saw that such a fate would be most beneficial to the Zhou dynasty, and as a result linked law and national fate together. Judging by the results, the Zhou dynasty is indeed strong. With the long history of the 9 provinces, empires rise and fall. Some thrive, some decline, and some withdraw altogether. Only the Zhou dynasty has consistently been among the top 3 in terms of national strength, never wavering. The strength of other empires depends on whether the emperor is a wise ruler or a foolish one. If a series of incompetent rulers appear, causing national unrest, then that empire is in danger. The emperors of the Zhou dynasty, whether wise or foolish, have always maintained order within their country, never allowing anything that could shake the foundations of their rule. Moreover, now there is Zhongli, the human emperor who loves order, who has set an example for all cultivators in the 9 provinces. Various forces have gradually changed their ways, making the Zhou dynasty not too conspicuous. The strongest individuals all act in accordance with the rules. What right do they, the nascent soul cultivators of the body integration realm and divinity transformation stage, have to bully the weak? With the departure of the ministers from both sides, the two looked at each other, their faces collapsed, and sighed in unison. How do we resolve the issue of the Luban sect? Who knows? They voluntarily went to your Zhou dynasty. They are 4 body integration realm cultivators plus countless divinity transformation nascent souls. What's there to be unhappy about? Their intentions are not pure, Comrade Yu Yin. Comrade. It's a term that Zhongli taught me. That's right, why don't we ask Zhongli about this matter? He has the most tricks up his sleeve. That seems like a good idea, but don't call Bai Hong to. These 2 people can't be together, otherwise, they will definitely cause a big mess. Yu Yin specifically warned, deep memories of the things these 2 had done together. The old human emperor tested the thinking agility and eloquence of the candidates for human emperor by setting a question, sell combs to monks, and whoever sold the most would win. Upon learning of this test, the human emperor candidates lamented and all felt it was an impossible task. One person made a great effort, running to 3 temples, receiving countless scoldings from monks, and getting chased and beaten. But his perseverance finally moved a young monk and he sold 1 comb. One person went to a treasure shrine deep in the mountains. Due to the high place and strong wind, it messed up the hair of both men and women who visited the shrine. He said to the abbot, "It is disrespectful to Buddha to appear untidy. We should place a wooden comb in front of each incense table for visitors to comb their hair." The abbot agreed and bought 10 combs. Yu Yin calmly analyzed that he could sell combs as gifts in the temple. He then came to a popular temple and told the abbot, "Anyone who comes to offer incense usually has a devout heart. The temple should have a return gift to ensure safety and auspiciousness, and encourage more good deeds. I have a batch of combs with carvings on them. Your calligraphy is superb. You can carve, 'Good deeds comb,' or similar words on it and give it to visitors as a gift." The abbot found it reasonable and bought 1,000 of them. 1,000 combs. This was a horrifying number. Yu Yin did not think anyone could surpass him. The fact proved that he was less experienced. Zhongli and Bai Hongtu prepared 10,000 combs, brought them to Mount Sumeru and gave them to the old Buddha of Mount Sumeru. The old Buddha was puzzled and asked what the combs were for. Zhongli and Bai Hongtu answered in unison. The old human emperor saw your leg hair is too long, specially let us bring some combs to comb your leg hair. The old Buddha of Mount Sumeru was furious, and smashed all the combs, going to settle the score with the old human emperor. The old human emperor was stunned by the dispute. The two great powers fought before misunderstandings were resolved. It turned out that it was the two scoundrels, Zhongli and Bai Hongtu, who were playing pranks. Hence, they were strung up and beaten in anger. After venting his anger, the old Buddha of Mount Sumeru felt a lot more relaxed. Seeing that the combs were all broken, he thought that he was not cultivating enough and easily got angry. As a lesson, he bought all the combs as a warning to himself. Zhongli and Bai Hongtu sold 10,000 combs, and jointly ranked first. They proved their thinking abilities. Their method of selling combs was unique. They also demonstrated their eloquence, disturbing the old Buddha of Mount Sumeru with just one sentence. The old human emperor once thought the 9 provinces earth veins was blind, letting these two become candidates for human emperor. Is Zhongli there? Gigi contacted Zhongli with a remote communication talisman. Now, the emperors of all the 9 great dynasties have commonly used the remote communication talisman. What is it? The Luban sect wants to move to our Zhou dynasty. What does this have to do with me? The Luban sect thinks that the Zhou dynasty's law has the highest effect, so they want to come to the Zhou dynasty and marry puppets, get approval from the Zhou dynasty. And according to the Zhou dynasty's marriage law, people can marry puppets. There's never a day when I can have some peace and quiet. Where are you now? I'll come and find you. This was no small matter. For a spiritual treasure to marry a human could lead to ethical issues and endless troubles. I'm in the palace of the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. I'll be right there. Bai Hongtu is not with you, is he? Zhongli was confused. Why would he be here with me? That's good. While waiting for Zhongli, Yu Yin chatted with Gigi. I didn't expect that you would withdraw from the position of human emperor candidate so soon. You ascended to the throne too early. Otherwise, your current level of cultivation would definitely be beyond the divinity transformation stage. Your talent in the Tao of time is a waste. Gigi was helpless. What can I do? My father had an accident all of a sudden. My brothers were not promising. I had to become the emperor. I thought you would sincerely be the crown princess consort after losing to Zhongli. I never thought you would become the emperor of the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. Who could foresee that the crown prince would be so fragile and get killed after just 2 strikes? The old emperor wanted to kill me. I couldn't just wait to be slaughtered, so I had to counter-kill. The Tianyuan Emperor dynasty was without a leader. If I didn't become the emperor, a bunch of incompetent people would fight for the throne, causing suffering for the people. Even if one of them were to ascend to the throne, they wouldn't be able to manage the country. So I reluctantly had to become an emperor. Fortunately, there are some benefits to being an emperor. You can use the fate of the nation to compete with other old transformation tribulation stage cultivators. Both of them were quite reluctant to be emperors. Chapter 242, Zhongli wants to retire. The fate of a nation can truly be both loved and loathed. If it weren't for national destiny weighing him down, Gigi would have long ago reached the body integration realm and gone back in time to thrash Zhongli. Gigi continued, but the power of faith is always handy. Use it when you want, don't when you don't. I heard that little rascal Zhongli put the faith power of the 9 states into the bronze cauldron, leaving it for the next human emperor. I wonder who the next human emperor will be. I guess they won't match up to Zhongli. Though Zhongli was quite the pot stirrer, Yu Yin had to admit that Zhongli's abilities and character were outstanding among all past human emperors. Discussing me behind my back again, huh? Zhongli heard them talking about him as soon as he arrived. We were discussing who the next human emperor might be. You always have a keen eye. Do you have anyone in mind? There are indeed a few, but without going through trials and tests, I can't be sure who among them can become the human emperor. Forget about this. What's happening with the Luban sect? Yu Yin said, I'll explain that. After puppets gained consciousness, the Luban sect brought up the trend of marrying puppets. Some people in the 9 states are prejudiced against the Luban sect, thinking they're getting fake wives. Outraged, the Luban sect plans to use the legal force to prove the validity of the marriages. They think the laws of the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty are less valid than the Zhou dynasties, so they're planning to relocate and marry in the Zhou dynasty. The Luban sect consists of 4 practitioners all at the body integration realm level, and their departure from the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty could hurt the nation's destiny. But the Zhou dynasty isn't keen on accepting the Luban sect members either. Zhou dynasty's marriage laws stipulate that marriages between sentient beings of different genders, regardless of race, are all recognized. The Zhou dynasty set the law this way, considering that not only humans exist, but also demons and spirits. They never expected anyone would take it as far as marrying a spiritual treasure. This idea was much too avant-garde. This loophole in the law could hurt the Zhou Empire's national destiny. The more Zhongli listened, the more his teeth ached. Today the Zhou Empire recognizes marriage between humans and puppets, tomorrow someone will propose spiritual treasures transforming, and the day after, someone will want to marry transformed elixirs. Why was it that other emperors were worried about resisting the heavenly demon while he had to deal with all these bizarre ideas? How was such an honest person like him supposed to handle these issues? Why can't everyone just focus on their cultivation practice? Gigi and Yu Yin glanced at Zhongli, guessing what he was thinking from his expression. You now know how the previous emperor felt when he saw you and Bai Hongtu, don't you? Zhongli was thinking about maybe speeding up the competition for the next emperor, choosing a successor soon and retiring early to enjoy a peaceful life. He'd already been at it for over 300 years. How many 3 centuries could one have in a lifetime, though it seemed that someone in the Mahayana realm could live for 100,000 years. That's not important, all he knew was that he wanted to retire. Zhongli started trying to solve the problem. Is it too late to change the Zhou Empire's laws? Even rushing through the process will take at least half a month, and I saw with my insight that the Luban sect will be arriving in Zhou in 10 days. Is there a faster way? Gigi thought about it. Actually, there is. Quote. Zhongli was elated. What is it? Activate a state of war, then the laws can be changed at will. Forget I asked. Zhongli knew what a state of war was. It would require the Zhou Empire to engage in large-scale war with other nations, a matter of life and death. By then, although the problem with the Luban sect would be solved, he'd face an even greater wartime problem. Plus, the duty of an emperor is to prevent war, not provoke it. What if we try to persuade the Luban sect? We can't persuade them. You can't stop them from getting married, and if you say puppets can't marry, they'll lose their patience. Then do this, you go back to Zhou and try to change the marriage law. Yu Yin and I will go to the Luban sect to assess the situation, maybe we can delay Thorn. Sounds good. Both Gigi and Yu Yin had no choice but to agree with this not-so-great plan. Just like the other forces within the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty, the Luban sect used to have an ironclad belief that a Dao partner wasn't necessary and they were reluctant to get married. After all, if one got married, they might face a betrayal from their Dao partner. Just because you're married to someone doesn't mean you can trust them with your life. If you have a partner that you don't trust, then it's better not to get married. This was the mindset of the cultivators who were above the foundation establishment stage. The Qi cultivation stage cultivators didn't have much money. Even if their Dao partner betrayed them, there wouldn't be much to gain. After puppets gained consciousness, the Luban sect had an epiphany. It's not that they didn't want a Dao partner, but that they couldn't find a suitable one. Who could resist a puppet that could change its appearance according to your preference, one that was devoted to you, and could be employed day and night? At least the Luban sect couldn't. Besides, the soul is what distinguishes living beings from inanimate objects. If it has a soul, then of course it's considered a living being. Zhongli shook his head. The Tianyuan Emperor dynasty frightened the cultivators to the point where they didn't dare to get married just to encourage competition. How dark. I'm trying to change that. Yu Yin also felt that the competition within the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty was too intense. In the past, she was just at the body integration realm, some people would ignore her orders. But now that she's reached the transcendence tribulation stage, she's the true ruler of the empire. Everyone obeys her and it allows her to change the nation. The two of them decided to observe the situation before making a decision and did not reveal themselves impulsively. Before they could enter the Luban sect, they were shocked by the 2 puppets at the entrance. These 2 puppets were very different from the mainstream puppet style in the 9 states. They were made from special metals and stood 50 meters tall. Under the sunlight, the metals reflected light, giving a sense of great power. They had a human form but sharper edges, unlike humans. In the Mingzhong world, these were called mechas. They overheard Luban sect disciples discussing these 2 puppets. These 2 puppets are really impressive. Absolutely. I heard these were inspired by our elder's discussions with the Taoist sect elder about the Mingzhong world. The elder said he didn't understand things like circuit boards and chips from the Mingzhong world, but he could incorporate 9 states characteristics, use puppet techniques to control metal, and churn them out overnight. Furthermore, the chest area of these metal puppets can be opened to allow someone to sit inside and control it. Our elder's quick thinking is truly admirable. A disciple of the Luban sect admired the metal puppets longingly. They're so cool. I'd love to give it a spin. Enough about that, have you decided whether you're staying here or going to the Zhou dynasty? Of course I'm going to Zhou. My wife and I grew up together, we've been inseparable since she was just a block of wood. It's just a shame that the world lacks understanding and can't comprehend our love. Exactly, what's wrong with marrying a puppet? At least we love each other passionately. Can those who mock us be sure that their marriages are filled with love, and not just forced because of their age? Zhongli and Yu Yin bypassed these two disciples and entered the Luban sect. The whole Luban sect was filled with an amorous atmosphere. Disciples and their puppets were making romantic eyes at each other, loving and affectionate. Working together, they could defeat everyone. There was no better cooperation than between a cultivator and his spiritual treasure. Suddenly, Zhongli thought about his sky-desolate halberd which had gained consciousness. Have I been neglecting it because I have never properly talked to it? Chapter 243, Headache. For Zhongli, the sky-desolate halberd had always lacked a presence. He had a good weapon, but no worthy opponent. As a result, the halberd was always in a somewhat awkward position. It didn't matter whether he used it or not. The last time he used it was during the activation of other immortal artifacts by the Yin-Yang Heaven Seal. That time, he used the sky-desolate halberd just in case, for combat. Later, Zhongli reflected that even if he didn't use the halberd, he could have quelled the rebellion of the immortal artifacts all the same. Thinking about it this way, using it as the array eye of the Kyushu Guardian formation was the best choice. I'm sorry, I'll definitely go and visit when I have time. Zhongli felt guilty, and quickly put the matter with the sky-desolate halberd aside. What more do you want from me after I've apologized? Without the use of divine sense, the female population of the Luban sect far exceeded that of the males, and all the females were young and beautiful. But through divine sense, one would realize that these females are all puppets. The puppets of the Luban sect were made to look very realistic. Previously, Zhongli's impression of the Luban sect was that its members were a group of monks who were not good at speaking, but loved to study the art of puppetry. Now, Zhongli's impression of the Luban sect had greatly changed. The once reticent monks became eloquent and were able to handle several female puppets at once. All the female puppets were willingly serving the monks. Even the simple act of speaking to the beautiful puppets became effortless. On average, a Luban sect disciple had 3 female puppets. It was indeed a blessing. I think they look happy. Somehow, I feel like we're the villains, Yu Yin said, with a hint of self-mockery. Zhongli shook his head and said, we can't think like that. Personally, I don't care who they marry, whether it's a spirit beast or a puppet, since they all are sentient beings. After all, marriage is a matter of choice. But considering the broader picture of Kyushu, we cannot let them get married in Zhou. It's like a brothel, it's a business that everyone tacitly acknowledges. As long as it's not about selling the innocent into prostitution and it's definitely not said that brothels are legal, everything can be negotiated. Why can't it be between a willing body and a willing payer of spirit stone? However, the matter of brothels goes against good customs and can't be openly discussed. This is the crux of the problem with the Luban sect. As long as we privately get married and be 0 trillion parties are willing, no one can interfere. But we can't openly claim that human beings and puppets can marry. At least not for now. This is not a problem about marriage, but a problem about the relationship between human beings and spiritual treasures. Previously, when the spiritual treasures became sentient, it caused turmoil in Kyushu and a major downfall of the practitioners. The situation has barely stabilized with the introduction of spiritual treasure laws and contracts, which has also led to an overall increase in the strength of Kyushu. If we agree to the marriage of the Luban sect, it might lead to numerous humans and spiritual treasures having deviations, and the stable situation would be disrupted again. The relationship between humans and spiritual treasures needs to be gradually adapted. We cannot take 2 big steps. Then, why don't you just tell them what you just said? Zhongli looked at Yu Yin in surprise, wondering how someone with her intellect could ask such a question. Then, he looked down and realized that it was the wishful gourd who had spoken. This was very in line with its way of thinking, direct. I am the human emperor, looking at things from the overall situation of Kyushu. The Luban sect is made up of ordinary monks. Why should they look at things from the bigger picture? Just give it a try. It won't have much of an impact. If it fails, we can think of other methods. Yu Yin said, we can't. Once the Luban sect knows our true thoughts, whatever reason we use to stop them later, they will think it's an excuse. They will develop a sense of rebellion and we will lose more than we gain. I don't understand. You humans think too complicatedly. It's even harder than mastering the power of punishment. Zhongli didn't expect the wishful gourd to understand. Zhongli and Yu Yin changed their appearances and approached a disciple of the Luban sect. Fellow Taoist, my name is Gong Li and this is my younger sister Gong Yin. We two siblings have long admired the Luban sect's reputation and wished to pay a visit. Can we join the Luban sect? Yu Yin was 1 year younger than Zhong Li. The Luban sect disciple called Lu Yu was the one who had made a show at the Zhou competition several days ago. He got disqualified by the referee for bringing too many puppets into the field. He was the senior brother of the Luban sect and was the best among his peers at mastering the art of puppetry. The size of his harem attests to this, with whole 18 stunningly different and beautiful puppets, ranging from a 14-year-old to a 35-year-old. Before the yin-yang heaven seal activated the spiritual treasures, everyone thought that the senior brother was strange for making so many beautiful puppets and calling them wives. After the yin-yang heaven seal showed its might and awakened the spiritual treasures of Kyushu, people regretted to their core, wishing only that they had learned from the senior brother and created more puppets. The senior brother was indeed wise. He foresaw the situation and made 18 wives in advance. My name is Lu Yu. Unfortunately, Taoist Gong Li, you have come at an inconvenient time. The Luban sect is about to move to Zhou soon and we're unable to recruit new disciples. Why is that? The Luban sect is a well-known major sect in our Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. You live well here. Why do you need to go to Zhou? Zhong Li casually referred it to our Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. Lu Yu, with his icy-faced but stunning wife in his arms, sighed, isn't it because many people ridicule the Luban sect, claiming that we are all homebody monks who dare not face reality and fantasize about having puppets as wives? To prove that it's not a mere fantasy, we are going to Zhou to get married. And Zhou requires that only citizens of Zhou can marry according to Zhou's marriage laws. Our sect unanimously decided that we might as well join Zhou. Why don't you guys get married according to our marriage laws in the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty? Obviously, it's because Zhou's laws carry the most authority. Zhong Li gave Yu Yin a sidelong glance, and thought, look, it's all your fault. The disciples of your Tianyuan Emperor dynasty break the laws every day without getting punished, losing the authority of the laws. Now, you see the consequence. Yu Yin returned Zhong Li's glance, implying that it's not only our Tianyuan Emperor dynasty that's like this. In fact, other dynasties are the same, and the White Marsh dynasty is even more serious than ours. Zhong Li retorted with a glance, stating that other dynasties haven't had this kind of problem. Only here did it occur. The two engaged in an intense glaring match which the wishful gourd found incoherent. Zhong Li was aware of the problems Lu Yu mentioned. When people learned from the Zhou competition that the disciples of the Luban sect were marrying puppets, opinions were divided. Some envied them, while others saw it as immoral and decadent. Most people couldn't understand the Luban sect's actions. People's mindsets are too rigid. They can't accept new things. Zhong Li detected the crux of the problem. Most people like to stick to traditions and resist change. When encountered with new things, they undoubtedly deemed them wrong. If he were to elaborate on this problem, Zhong Li could write a thick book. However, it would still not solve the immediate issue. The majority's viewpoint may not necessarily be right, but you can't ignore it either. This was indeed a big headache. Chapter 244, Zhong Li T's Eloquence. It was not really about seeking a marriage in the Da Zhou dynasty for the Luban sect, rather they desired people's recognition. Through his conversation with Lu Yu, Zhong Li had a rough plan to address this issue. Within the council hall of the Luban sect, the sect master and 3 elders were discussing their relocation. How are the preparations? Are there any items that have not yet been listed? We're still counting, and it should be finished within 2 days, everything will then be packed into the storage ring. The eldest elder was in charge of this part. Good. Only, how should we handle buildings like our library, training fields and experiment sites? Let them stay or pack them into our storage ring and move them to Da Zhou. The eldest elder had a strong affection for these buildings as they were built by his own hands. Let them stay. After a few days, we will move to Da Zhou. This place will still be the former site of the Luban sect, we can't leave it completely bare. I sense your hesitation, you don't want to leave the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty, do you? The eldest elder heaved a sigh. The sect master had no choice. Who would want to leave the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty and move to Dan Xinu? It was not torqued, it was all because of being pushed into a corner by others. Did you find a new location in Da Zhou, second elder? We found a place, but the price is 30% higher than what we anticipated. Third elder, do we have enough spirit stones in our reserve? If it's only an increase of 30%, we can grit our teeth and manage it. However, the next few years might be a bit tough, especially when we just moved to a new place without any connections and there will be necessary expenditures. Likely, we can't afford the disciples' monthly stipends and can only repay them when we're more stable again. The third elder continued, alternatively, we can borrow from the Feiyan Commerce Association, but the interest rate will be higher than what we're used to. The sect master gritted his teeth, the disciples are in the golden period of their cultivation, we can't let them suffer. Let's borrow from the Feiyan Commerce Association. Quote. All four of them had no experience with relocating their sect. After doing it firsthand, the challenges made them want to give up. But when they thought about the doubts coming from the outside world about the Lubin sect, it sparked a fire in their hearts. This very fire propelled them to insistently move to Dazhou and prove to the world their relationship with puppets. We love puppets so much that we could even marry them. Dazhou law has tolerated this, none of you have any reasons to mock and question us. You can say that we're all weird in your eyes, but you can't question the relationship between us and the puppets, let alone sneer at us. This is the bottom line. Do you really want to abandon your homeland and move to Dazhou? Why not take some time to consider it carefully? Zhongli walked into the hall with a hearty laugh and beside him was Yu Yin with a gourd at her waist. The human emperor, your majesty. The four of them stood up and paid their respects at once. Does the human emperor mean to persuade us to stay here? Yu Yin said. Sect Master Gong Su, do you really think that if you go to Dazhou and get married there, obtaining the power of law, people will stop commenting about you? The four of them fell silent. Indeed, even if they were to go to Dazhou and have their marriage recognized, that won't necessarily silence the outside world. Perhaps, people would say that the Lubin sect is taking advantage of loopholes in Dazhou law, stubbornly insisting on getting married, and this would be a constant source of ridicule. Zhang Li said, as the decision-makers of the Lubin sect, you can't make a decision to relocate out of anger. Moving a sect is not child's play. Sect Master Gong Yu considered it for a moment, then bowed his fist and said, we understand the human emperor's point, but as cultivators, even if we don't compete for the status of immortality, we have to fight for our pride. Please forgive us, your majesty. The four of them felt a bit ungrateful. A Transcendence Tribulation stage and a Mahayana realm figure were advising them not to relocate. They were aware that there were problems in the way they handled things. But as they always say, cultivators do not compete with heaven, nor with earth, but they do compete with men, they compete with dignity, with their beliefs. Zhang Li waved his hand with a laugh, before deciding, why don't you listen to my point of view first? The four of them frowned slightly but patiently remained seated and listened. Yu Yin was also curious about what Zhang Li's solution would be. I can understand your intimacy and affection for the puppets, and I can also understand why you've made the decision to marry them. After all, the puppets do have spiritual intelligence and souls, so they are naturally apt to be companions. There is nothing wrong with this. The four of them relaxed their brows slightly and their expressions did not look as tense. However, your concept is too advanced. The majority of people can't accept it, just like when I first became a Mahayana realm cultivator and many people didn't believe it. After all, the last Mahayana realm cultivator appeared 30 to 40,000 years ago, and only Chong Kun Xian Wang had seen it. Nevertheless, what is true remains true. Even those who are rigid in their thoughts must accept the fact that I am in the Mahayana realm, and that they need to treat spiritual treasures with respect as they now have spirituality. Despite this, there are still many ignorant people who have not realized the advent of the era where spiritual treasures have spirituality, and these ignorant people are the majority. Acceptance needs a process, it can't be achieved all at once. The situation the Lubin sect is facing is similar to when I first became a Mahayana realm cultivator. Becoming more intimate with a spiritual treasure is an inevitable trend. You guys are ahead of the wave, and more waves are coming. You've made no mistake, you have merely advanced too far. All you need to do is to slow down and wait for the people behind. Yu Yin sent a message to her gourd, learn something from it. Learn what? To get married to a spiritual treasure. Ruyi Gourd was overjoyed at the prospect, but it became a bit apprehensive immediately. It was already on cloud 9 from being stepped on by its owner, how could it be so entitled as to learn Zhang Li's rhetoric? Yu Yin widened her eyes, unsure of how Ruyi Gourd's mind worked, always having such peculiar thoughts. Zhang Li emphasizes from the beginning that the Lubin sect did nothing wrong, which is his dominant theme, implying that he is on the same side as the Lubin sect. Therefore, the Lubin sect will listen to his further words, not feeling like Zhang Li is trying to smooth things over. And then he uses being a Mahayana realm cultivator as an example, applying his own experience, giving the Lubin sect a strong sense of accomplishment, as if they are worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as a Mahayana realm cultivator. Yu Yin added quietly, at least she had heard about being a Mahayana realm cultivator before, but she had never heard of people marrying spiritual treasures, not to mention a group wedding. More than being on par with Mahayana realm cultivators, it was a step beyond. Zhongli then says that the majority of people in JoJo are mistaken, making the Luban sect feel they are the wise ones. Being the wise ones, they should have the patience to wait for the ignorant ones. Zhongli also switched concepts, changing marrying spiritual treasures into having intimate relationships with spiritual treasures. Having close relationships with spiritual treasures is indeed the general trend, but marrying them is not necessarily so. But the Luban sect, being flattered to Cloud 9, will not mind such small details while they're in high spirits. Why switch concepts? Ruyi Gord was confused. To ensure that whatever he says remains correct. Even in the future, he can proudly revisit his words. So does he actually think so? Initially Ruyi Gord believed that what Zhongli said was right, but after analyzing it with its master, whether Zhongli was making superficial remarks or was sincere was in question. Does it matter whether his words are true or false? Ruyi Gord fell silent. It thought, just by the wisdom of a spiritual weapon, it was never advisable to outsmart a human. No wonder its older brother Yin Yang Heaven Seal gave in so fast without mentioning the matter of establishing a spiritual treasure dynasty again. Otherwise, when the spiritual treasure dynasty is established, it would be hard to say if it was humans or spiritual treasures that held the helm. Did you learn anything? I learned to give up. Chapter 245, Immortal Artifact Gathering. After Zhongli's heartfelt persuasion, the sect master and the three elders of the Luban sect, filled with the arrogance of wisdom, thought highly of themselves and forgave the fools of the outside world. To move the sect only because they had been offended by a bunch of old farts. Only idiots would do that. The four unanimously agreed to abandon the idea of moving their sect, and decided to stay within the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. Problem solved. Zhongli informed Yu Yin. You are truly good at coaxing. How can you call it coaxing? Can you put your hand on your heart and tell me I spoke a single lie? Zhongli stared wide-eyed. I don't have a conscience, Yu Yin said expressionlessly, causing Zhongli to choke. I feel like I've forgotten something, Zhongli thought to himself when he had some leisure time. It seemed like there was something he needed to do. Oh, I remember now, I didn't tell Gigi about the Luban sect issue. Zhongli smacked his forehead. Gigi was probably still rushing to amend the marriage law. Zhongli flew towards Dazhou. Zhongli could have just sent a message to Gigi using the remote communication talisman, but he wanted to seek out Gigi for his study in time travel, so he personally went to Dazhou. What if he learned it this time? Yu Yin gazed up at the sky desolate halberd, far in the sky. Yu Yin was sold to the crown princess by her parents when she was young, to exchange for glory and wealth. She didn't like her family. The crown prince at the time didn't treat Yu Yin as his fiancé, but rather as a tool to become the human emperor, a plaything. Having grown up in such an environment, Yu Yin rarely spoke. She was reclusive, and her eyes were full of indifference and ruthlessness. She yearned for someone to be by her side, but she was once a crown princess consort, now an empress. These two identities destined her for a life with few friends. If it weren't for Zhongli and Bai Hongtu, who were optimistic by nature, she probably wouldn't have a single friend. Yu Yin felt pity for the sky desolate halberd, thinking it had been abandoned by its master, helpless, lonely, and miserable, probably crying alone in a corner, which was too pitiful. Yu Yin wanted to care for the sky desolate halberd in place of Zhongli. She flew to the skies above the Jojo continent, arriving at the location of the protective matrix core. Come, everyone, enjoy yourselves. This is my territory, no one is in charge. The sky desolate halberd shouted. 9 aerial dance maidens swayed their waists, gliding their feet, performing an elegant dance. 100 songstresses plucked their stringed instruments, softly singing, their voices melodious and charming, the bell chimes humming faintly. I just love Sky Desolate's boisterous character. The Confucians hum and haw in everything, it's so annoying. The great Confucian word post twisted its figure, dancing with the music, it tore itself until only the cover was left. The dancers and songstresses were all its transformations. The Four Seas Dragon Ball and Mount Heshan were laughing, crashing into each other, creating sparks. Haha, none of you can compare to my hardness, Mount Heshan laughed out loud. Brother Stone, be gentler. We can't handle being hit like this, the Four Seas Dragon Ball cried out in pain, but soon after, they recklessly collided again with each other, resulting in a lively atmosphere. The immortal artifacts and unique weapons enjoyed themselves tremendously. Yu Yin found this scene quite different from what she had imagined. Ruyi, you're here, come and join us. The sky desolate halberd invited Yu Yin and the Ruyi Gord upon seeing them. We immortal artifacts and the sky desolate halberd occasionally have gatherings, the Ruyi Gord explained quietly. Zhang Li arrived at Dazhou, finding Gigi arguing fiercely with several ministers. What's wrong with the concept of human? Why can't I use it? Using human as the subject of the marriage, won't that avoid the spiritual treasures from marrying? Gigi roared, slapping the case, causing the memorials on it to bounce up. Human means human race. Your Majesty, by using the concept of human, how will the demon race and spirits marry in Dazhou? Are they not citizens of Dazhou too? Dazhou was not only home to the human race, occasionally there were also demon races and spirits, but they were few in number. Who said that human just means human race? The human race, the demon race, and spirits can all be counted as human. Is the human emperor the emperor of the human race? Don't the demon race and spirits also fall under the human emperor's jurisdiction? You can ask Zhang Li, and see how he interprets the human of the human emperor. Your Majesty, you guys. The argument between the two parties was so heated that it seemed like they were about to raise the roof. Zhang Li was startled by the ruckus. Those in the know understood that the argument was about amending the law, those who didn't probably thought it was two armies battling each other. Excuse me, the Luban sect has agreed not to move to Dazhou. You guys don't need to argue so fiercely, Zhang Li finally appeared and said. This has nothing to do with the Luban sect. And also, we are not arguing. Gigi yelled at the top of his lungs. Right, this has nothing to do with the Luban sect. This matter is about the rigor of the law, even His Majesty should not casually expand the concept. Several elderly ministers refused to back down. They had studied the law their whole lives, held great authority, and weren't afraid of Gigi. Zhang Li, you tell us, what is your concept of human? The human emperor Zhang Li had his own interpretation of the term human. The beings that the human emperor protected were not just the human race, but all sentient beings in Zhouzhou, including the human race, demon race, spirits, and also spiritual treasures. Zhang Li governed the White Marsh Emperor dynasty, the Elder Tree Marquis, being a spirit, became the marshal, all these clearly illustrated the point. He believed that all creatures with a spirit, and not immortals, should be categorized as human. One knave Samet NMG else to attend to. You guys continue your discussion. Lanese people could argue about one concept for a whole month. Zhang Li didn't want to get involved. Zhang Li found Ji Kongkong, watching her transform into a white fish, practicing time travel. Her sister was in charge of teaching her. Uncle Zhang, the second princess of Dazhou, greeted Zhang Li as soon as she saw him. I remember you are called Ji Waiyu. Yes. Ji Waiyu was a little excited when Zhang Li remembered her name. Practicing the art of time travel, I see. You keep practicing. I'll just watch for a while, Zhang Li said cheerfully. Originally, Ji Kongkong had wanted to transform back into human form and put on her clothes to meet Uncle Zhang. Hearing Uncle Zhang say this, she decided otherwise and continued practicing the art of time travel. Ji Waiyu also put in her full effort to teach Ji Kongkong. Practicing the art of time travel allows one to know everything from past to present, but what one can see from the time of the past and the future is limited by their cultivation level and natural talent. For instance, our father, with his increasing level of cultivation, can now see events from 280 years ago, but when it comes to the future, he can still only see up to one day ahead. Seeing the future is much more difficult than seeing the past. Kongkong, you should be familiar with this. You can see events from 9 hours ago, yet you can only see 3 minutes into the future. Moreover, being able to see the past and the future is only considered a minor accomplishment in the art of time travel. Our ancestor Shun once said, the time of all heavens and infinite realms appear in an independent space, which is the river of time. There, it is treated as space, but it is not the general concept of space. Only by reaching the river of time is the art of time travel considered to have minor success. But you're still young, the river of time is too far-fetched for you. Usually, one needs to chant an incantation to enter the river of time. I'll teach you the content of the incantation when the time comes. Ji Kongkong jumped out of the water, landing on Zhang Li's palm, showing off, I feel I have touched upon the threshold of the river of time, second sister, do you think that's the case? Ji Kongkong and Zhang Li progressively grew faint, losing their sense of existence, until they disappeared. Ji Waiyu incredulously witnessed the scene before her. Ji Kongkong had taken Uncle Zhang to the river of time. She didn't even know the incantation yet. Chapter 246, Stepping into the River of Time. The great Zhou dynasty family had a rigorous procedure for studying the path of time. First, theory learning, followed by trying to see the past, then the future. If one could proficiently see the past and future, they would then be taught incantations and how to enter the river of time. When entering the river of time, the presence of an elder is essential. It is incredibly dangerous for a novice cultivator to enter the river of time alone. The slightest mistake could lead to total annihilation. An incantation is the key to the river of time. Historically, no one has been able to directly enter the river of time without mastering the incantation. Ji Kongkong was the first to accomplish this. Even Ji, who possesses double pupils, couldn't achieve this feat. Let alone Ji Yu being unprepared for such an event, even Zhang Li, the person involved, was shocked. He only felt the flow of time slow down, then decelerate, until it stopped completely. In the end, only Zhang Li and Ji Kongkong were still able to move. A fissure appeared in front of them. Ji Kongkong, having transformed into a white fish, swam into it, followed by Zhang Li. The river flowed ceaselessly, encompassing the past, present, and future. A fog of chaos loomed over it, its waves echoing against the shore with forceful roars. The sky was dreary, as if it had always been this way and would never change. Is this the river of time? Zhang Li was taken aback. He had only heard about this scene from Ji, who had boasted in detail about it, but never had he experienced it himself. Ji had mentioned that once he reached the Transcendence Tribulation stage, he could bring Zhang Li to the river of time. Zhang Li jokingly mentioned that it would be more reliable to rely on his daughter instead. And indeed, he did come to rely on her, albeit a bit too early. Ji Kongkong, who hasn't even achieved the foundation establishment stage, managed to bring him to the river of time. This was too incredible. Zhang Li, standing on the riverbank, noticed Ji Kongkong preparing to jump into the river. Frightened, he quickly caught her. Are you seeking death? This is the river of time. If you go in with your frail body, you'll not even leave behind a trace. Zhang Li strictly warned Ji Kongkong. If something happened to Ji Kongkong, Ji would certainly hold him accountable. Oh, Ji Kongkong obediently settled in Zhang Li's palms. They were both novices, entering the river of time for the first time. With no experience, they dared not act recklessly. Who's there, disturbing our intimacy? An inhospitable voice drifted from the depths of the river. What was strange was that despite the sounds of the tumbling river, the voice was clearly heard. Zhang Li saw two white fish in the river. One ran away upon his arrival, while the other, which looked unfamiliar yet felt oddly familiar, leapt out of the water and glared angrily at the visitors ashore. Let me see who dares to disrupt my affair. We were about to get married, do you know, damn it, it's Zhang, the human emperor. The infuriated whitefish was almost frightened out of its wits when it saw Zhang Li. You managed to find me even in the river of time. You deliberately scared off my girlfriend and tore us apart. What a vicious heart. Zhang Li was puzzled. Are you the past and present sword? Zhang Li remembered the box left by Emperor Shun and realized that the angry whitefish was Emperor Shun, or rather, the past and present sword. What he didn't understand was how it changed from a fishbone sword into a fish. Did Emperor Shun leave the box because Zhang Li had disrupted his affair? Having interrupted a couple, Zhang Li felt a sense of inexplicable guilt. While Zhang Li was deep in thought, he attempted to grab the past and present sword, not to capture it but to ask it some questions. However, the past and present sword mistook his intentions and quickly swam downstream towards the future, which was the direction his girlfriend had fled. But having only swum a little way, it looked up to see another Zhang Li standing on the shore above. There were two Zhang Li in the river of time. How come you are present in the future as well? With Zhang Li waiting downstream, it didn't dare go there anymore as it might never see its girlfriend again. Had Zhang Li not shown up, nothing of this would have occurred. The past and present sword grumbled angrily. Hearing the past and present sword's angry shout, Zhang Li paused for a moment. I exist in the future as well. So, I've been to the river of time in the future too. Zhang Li looked in the direction of the future, but the world of the river of time was shrouded in chaos fog, obscuring the past and future. How can I dispel this fog? Zhang Li asked. Only entities who have mastered the path of time can dispel the fog and see the past and future. Uncle Zhang is not well versed in the path of time, it may be difficult for him to clear the fog. My ancestor once said that there was originally no fog in the river of time. This chaos fog is a vision barrier for outsiders, beings born in the river of time cannot see this fog. Ji Kongkong explained. She was not only better at the path of time than Zhang Li, but she also knew more about it than Zhang Li. How far can you see then? I can see 9 hours into the past and 3 minutes into the future. The river of time is unique. It does not measure distance in meters or kilometers but in units of time. Each droplet of the river represents incidents that occurred at a certain moment in a specific area. Zhongli crouched down and curiously observed the water droplets. He saw the current scene. Gigi was arguing with various ministers, Bai Hongtu was performing the establishment of the 3 Pure Land card game, the Wooden Commander and the clan leader of the Jiyu clan, Ai Su, were in love, Zhang Konggu was sound asleep. Only events from Juzhou. Because this is the river of time for Juzhou. Ji Kongkong pointed with her fishtail at a vague wall behind Zhongli. If one passes this wall, they can reach the river of time of other worlds. However, I am unclear how to cross it since father never taught me. Zhongli walked over to it and tried his hand at pushing, feeling like he could manage it. As soon as he pushed slightly, Ji Kongkong stopped him. Uncle Zhong, don't do this. Father has said that our knowledge of the river of time is very limited, we cannot act rashly. Any slight carelessness here may cause time-space confusion and chaos in yin and yang. Immediately, Zhongli abandoned his plan to go to another river of time. Zhongli, with Ji Kongkong in tow, went to the location 9 hours ago from the present. They crouched down to see the 9 hours ago scene. Gigi was visiting the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty, Bai Hongtu was using the sowing beans into soldiers technique to play football, Wooden Commander was pulling out demon cultivators from which country, Zhang Konggu was asleep soundly. I get the feeling some scenes haven't changed. Can you see the distance from 18 hours ago here? Ji Kongkong shook her head. Even if we change positions, I can only see from 9 hours ago to now, and from now to the next 3 minutes. If changing position allowed me to see the more distant past, wouldn't father be able to see events from 1,000, 10,000 years ago? Zhongli was about to nod in agreement when a question arose. Hold on, you've studied the path of time, so you can see 9 hours into the past. Ji Kongkong too, was taken aback, and mumbled, that's right, father mentioned that the distance one can see is the path one can walk. If one attempts to go beyond their limit, they will be unable to take even a single step. Uncle Zhong, since you don't master the path of time, you should only be able to remain stationary and not travel to the past or future. As Ji Kongkong spoke, she jumped into the earlier past, but an invisible force bounced her back into Zhongli's hands, like this. Zhongli left Ji Kongkong where she was and walked towards the past. He indeed felt an invisible resistance but noticed that the force was just as weak as air resistance. Had Ji Kongkong not pointed it out, he wouldn't have noticed it at all. He continued his journey into the past and saw scenes from 10 hours, 11 hours before. Chapter 247, The Unconscious Ji Kongkong. Gigi had mentioned the Time River to Zhongli more than once, stating that it was shrouded in dense fog, and any place where the fog was thick, one could never pass through. Ji Kongkong proved this point. Zhongli provided a counterexample. Zhongli could walk freely on the riverbank, and the thick fog couldn't stop him at all. The world of the Time River truly only contained the white fish in the river, with no other living beings. The white fish disliked movement, lingering at a single point in time. The past and present sword was an exception among the white fish. Only it had unlocked spiritual intelligence, bouncing around energetically. It was distinct among the white fish, and its major difference from normal fish was that it dwelled in the Time River. Zhongli strode off towards the past, leaving countless fractions of time behind him. 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. Half a month, 1 month, 2 months. Half a year, 1 year, 2 years. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. Zhongli walked to the distant past, the thick fog still couldn't stop his pace. He saw himself just having overcome the 15th heavenly tribulation, a latecomer in the cultivator system. He saw himself easily defeating the extraterritorial devil, protecting Jojo. He saw himself reaching the Mahayana realm with luck and intent. He saw himself forced to ascend the throne, fighting against 2 individuals at the Transcendence Tribulation stage. He saw Zhang Yixing being deceived by the extraterritorial devil, learning the method of demonic cultivation, and heading towards the abyss. This must be that celestial-level extraterritorial devil who lurked in Jojo for a while. Initially, Zhongli had wanted Gigi to keep practicing and tracing back even further in time to find this extraterritorial devil, but Gigi turned out to be unreliable, so he had to do it himself. The extraterritorial devil was cloaked in a wide black robe, its appearance unclear. All one could tell was its roughly humanoid shape. Zhongli was disappointed as he couldn't extract much information from the scene. Zhongli still wanted to move forward to see how this extraterritorial devil descended on Jojo. Maybe it didn't conceal its face back then. It was then that Zhongli suddenly remembered what Gigi had said: cultivators shouldn't stay in the world of the Time River for too long. Staying there continuously was equivalent to uninterrupted application of the power of time. The light consequence would be complete depletion of spiritual energy, the grave one, the loss of life and cultivation. Zhongli himself was fine, but Ji Kongkong was still in there. Zhongli hurriedly ran back. Returning to the original place, he saw Ji Kongkong lying on the ground, barely breathing. "Uncle Zhong, I was waiting for you, can we go back now?" Ji Kongkong's eyes were cloudy, showing signs of unconsciousness. "Good girl, it's my fault for not considering you. Let's go back now." Zhongli guiltily picked up Ji Kongkong, continuously apologizing. Zhongli knew that Ji Kongkong could return by herself. Her worry was that he himself didn't know how to return, so she forcibly stayed there, waiting for him. However, Zhongli indeed did not know how to return. Ji Kongkong used the last of her strength to open a rift, and Zhongli, carrying Ji Kongkong, returned to Jojo. The second princess, Ji Waiyu, saw Zhongli and her sister vanish, and in the blink of an eye, the two of them reappeared. But the state of the two was drastically different from when they had disappeared. Zhongli anxiously held Ji Kongkong in her fish form, and Ji Kongkong was unconscious from exhaustion. What happened? Ji Waiyu was taken aback. Ji Kongkong's state was too terrible. Without time to explain, Zhongli infused her with pure spiritual energy while dashing into the Yangxin Hall to seek help from Gigi. Gigi and several ministers were still discussing the human issue when their discussion was abruptly interrupted by Zhongli. They had never seen Zhongli so anxious before. "Come and see what's happened to Kongkong." Seeing the situation, Gigi didn't care about the discussion on legal issues anymore and ran over to check on his precious daughter's condition. "Phew, she's all right, just an overexertion of spiritual sense. Some sleep and she'll be fine." Gigi let out a sigh of relief. Hearing this, Zhongli also felt ease. Zhongli took out superb celestial treasures and elixirs to recover spiritual sense and gave them to Ji Kongkong to ingest, causing many high-level cultivators to turn green with envy. Even the treasury of the Zhou dynasty didn't have many of these, indicating their high value. Especially that 8 polar sea expanding elixir which could foster the spiritual platform, expand the sea of consciousness, and enhance spiritual sense. It was a top-grade elixir for spiritual sense, rare in ingredients, and extremely hard to refine. Even Su Wei only had a success rate of 1/5. Gigi watched his beloved daughter continuously taking celestial treasures that Zhongli had accumulated, his mouth twitching. These things, some were for instant recovery of spiritual sense, some for slow recovery, and some even laid a foundation for the enhancement of spiritual sense. Zhongli had never given such good stuff to him. Gigi could imagine, with Ji Kongkong's growth, the medicinal effects accumulated in her body would gradually take effect, making her a cultivator with unparalleled strong spiritual sense. The elixirs and treasures Zhongli gave to Ji Kongkong were indeed powerful, so Ji Kongkong kept sleeping to absorb the medication. Ji Kongkong's bedroom had a bed and a tub filled with water, which was for the fish form Ji Kongkong, just perfect for the current situation. Zhongli put Ji Kongkong into the tub, letting her rest. But it's strange, this is the result of overusing the power of time. "What did you guys do?" "We went to the Time River." "What?" Gigi thought he was hearing things. Zhongli narrated everything from start to end, and Gigi felt as if a new door had been opened. "Thank God you broke up Shunzu and his ex-girlfriend, otherwise where would my Ji family be?" Zhongli felt that Gigi's concern was misplaced. "Your daughter, at the 8th level of Qi cultivation, could take me to the Time River. You're in the late stage of divinity transformation, just a step away from the body integration realm. Why can't you do it?" Gigi bragged. "This proves that my Kongkong has a high talent. She could go to the Time River without reciting any verses. Even though I have high expectations of her, her talent in the power of time completely surpassed my expectations. Your journey to the Time River is not much related to Kongkong's cultivation. Kongkong has returned to her ancestry, making her half a creature of the Time River. Her first entry into the Time River caused resonance, allowing you to enter by chance. Not just you, even a pig on the side would have entered." "Oh, I didn't mean you're a pig, don't overthink it." Gigi accidentally said what he really thought and promptly tried to remedy it. "I'm not a vengeful person, continue. Such a thing won't happen again next time. The first time is a special case, probably the second time only Ji Kongkong alone can enter the Time River, she can't bring others." Zhongli was perplexed. Then what did the past and present sword mean when it said it saw me in the future? I don't know about that. Maybe Kong Kong took you in when she reached the body integration realm, or maybe you found another method to enter the time river. Gigi shrugged. By the way, how come I didn't see you by the riverbank? Zhongli had walked from the present to the past of more than 300 years, and from start to end, he didn't see Gigi's figure. During this period, Gigi had been to the time river more than once. Gigi rolled his eyes at the ignorant Zhongli. I've told you countless times, don't perceive the world of the time river as a normal world. Normal logic doesn't apply there. Chapter 248. What's there to flaunt about the Mahayana realm? The time river has many peculiarities, such as it being measured by time rather than length, the lack of human race, the inability of the Brahma Tower, which controls the path of space, to be transported to the world within the time river, and so forth. Only those who enter the time river at the same time can see each other, like you and Ji Kong Kong. People from the past can't see those from the future, and the future can't see the past either. These are the restrictions placed by the time river on outsiders. Of course, you could not possibly see me. Creatures of the time river are not bounded by this rule. For instance, Ancestor Shun can see you now, as well as your future self. These rules that Gigi shared were not discovered by him, but recorded in the scripts left by Emperor Shun, supplemented by conclusions drawn from the attempts of generations of the Ji family. If people from the future could meet with those of the past, couldn't I tell my past self what will happen in the future? Do I look like someone who's seen the future to you? Ancestor Shun said he saw your future self, and your future self didn't meet your current self. This already explains a lot. The creatures of the time river clearly have unique rules, Zhongli joked, noting that none of these rules applied to Baiyu. Gigi corrected Zhongli's perspective. You're wrong. We, who have stepped into the time river, are the ones who are peculiar. You can think of the time river as a reflection of the time of various worlds, separate from any world, independent of JoJo, and independent of the immortal realm. In theory, no creatures from worlds outside the time river should set foot in it, but there are always exceptions, like Ancestor Shun who left his descendants, shaping us. We are the exceptions, while Baiyu are the norm. Those who have always lived in the normal world, once they enter a world that only consists of time, would naturally be subject to a multitude of constraints. There's another issue. Quote, Gigi felt a sense of achievement answering Zhongli's ignorant questions, which delighted him. Even you have today. Gigi felt that today, for the first time, he had the chance to surpass Zhongli in terms of knowledge. Save for more wives than Zhongli, Gigi could not exceed Zhongli in anything. He was 2 levels behind Zhongli in cultivation, and while his status as Zhou Emperor was equivalent to the human emperor, in the eyes of the people of JoJo, the human emperor held a higher rank than any other emperor. Zhongli made friends without regard to cultivation level, only character, and had a wide network. Gigi, as the Zhou emperor, had to maintain the authority of the emperor and could not make friends indiscriminately. The time Gigi came closest to Zhongli was when the two were classmates. At that time, they were students in the Great Zhou Dynasty family school, and Gigi could only see the future up to 4 hours ahead. He planned to review the textbooks and discuss the questions with his classmates to find the answers after the exams. During the examination, he used his heavy pupils to observe the actions of his future self and obtain the exam answers. This was equivalent to an open book exam, or even worse. But he still came in second. Zhongli firmly held the top position. Gigi was very frustrated by not being able to surpass Zhongli, despite cheating. Zhongli consistently achieved first place during his time at the Great Zhou Dynasty family school, which laid the foundation for his solid cultivation theory. The worst part was that there was an uncle of Gigi's who was well versed in the ways of time in the Great Zhou Dynasty family school. He found out about Gigi's cheating and reported it to the old Zhou Emperor. The old Zhou Emperor was furious, reprimanding Gigi for not setting a good example as a member of the royal family, abusing his talent to breach the rules. Consequently, he whipped him with a water-soaked leather strap on the buttocks, and prohibited him from taking any elixirs for healing. That was the time when Gigi cried the hardest. Later, Gigi spent the entirety of his holiday lying in bed with his buttocks raised. From then on, Gigi strictly adhered to the rules and became an excellent student of the royal family, and subsequently, a wise monarch. Why was I able to walk freely on the riverbank, and the mist didn't stop me? Asked Zhongli. Gigi suddenly deflated. Is there any other explanation other than Zhongli being excessively powerful and unreasonable? He definitely can't claim that Zhongli, in reality, is a genius well versed in the ways of time and had an epiphany in the base time river. Gigi himself didn't believe that. Gigi had just heard from Zhongli that he was frolicking along the riverbank, and he had an eyelid twitch. In JoJo, no one knows more about the Time River than the Ji family. The Ji family has a history of tens of thousands of years, and their ancestors were fish swimming up the river. They had seen all sorts of vicissitudes in their time. However, they had never witnessed or even heard of a case as absurd as Zhongli's. Gigi reckoned, were it not for Zhongli worrying about Ji Kongkong's safety, he would have run back 9,000 years to see how the ladder to immortality disappeared. Honestly, I always feel you're excessively powerful for someone in the Mahayana realm. I don't know what it's like for a heavenly immortal, but an earth immortal definitely cannot break through the thick fog with brute strength. Gigi looked at Zhongli suspiciously. We're all brothers here, tell me the truth, are you already a celestial being, or is there another realm above the Mahayana realm, but you've been keeping it a secret for fear of discouraging? Does this spiritual power of mine look like that of a celestial being to you? Besides, didn't the eternal immortal say it? Mahayana practitioners are rare and come around every few tens of thousands of years, their extraordinary combat power is to be expected. Just like the Mahayana practitioner from 30 to 40,000 years ago, who ascended and became a heavenly immortal immediately after, and broke subsequent limits several times, becoming a giant in the immortal realm, commanding respect everywhere. Mahayana practitioners are scarce. The most recent ones date back to 30 to 40,000 years ago, which were only encountered by the eternal immortal. For the ones further back in time, one would have to look back 80 to 90,000 years when the eternal immortal had not even been born yet. Of course, I, as a Mahayana practitioner, might be a bit stronger than that predecessor from 30 to 40,000 years ago. That predecessor was incapable of defeating a heavenly immortal, while I probably can. Zhongli said proudly. Zhongli wasn't quite clear about his own strength, mainly because since becoming a Mahayana practitioner, he had not encountered a suitable opponent as a benchmark. A body integration realm practitioner can easily shatter stars, or even destroy an entire star system. A transcendence tribulation stage practitioner can treat planets like dust, manipulating them as they wish. An earth immortal at full strength can destroy an entire world. Zhongli, being slightly stronger than an earth immortal, of course, could also destroy an entire world. This was evident from when he gathered and refined the stars of the entire universe into tombstones. But Zhongli knew that this was not his limit, he hadn't used his full strength yet. However, he couldn't destroy a few worlds just to test his power. Otherwise, he would have drawn the admiration of the heavenly demons from outside the realm. Finding an opponent who can bear the brunt of my full strength is so difficult. Zhongli lamented. He hadn't used his full strength for over 200 years. Get lost, get lost, get lost, don't be a nuisance here. Gigi glared at Zhongli in anger. As someone at the divinity transformation stage, he could not understand Zhongli's feelings at all. Although the stronger Zhongli was, the safer JoJo would be, Gigi was still annoyed by his show-off attitude. Show off what? If I were a Mahayana practitioner I would probably show off more than Zhongli, thought Gigi guiltily. Chapter 249, Commentary on the Book, Biography of the River's Human Emperor. Zhongli was expelled from the palace by Gigi and was now wandering aimlessly throughout the imperial city alone. A large billboard outside a tea house grabbed his attention. Today's storytelling. The Legend of the Human Emperor Zhong. Beneath the sign was a small line of text. This story is purely fictional and does not correspond to real characters. After all, they were in the Great Zhou Imperial City, under the feet of the emperor, and the first thing to do was to avoid responsibility. Zhongli paid the entrance fee and entered the tea house to an immediate round of applause. In spite of Zhongli not having become the human emperor yet, he already possessed a third of the emperor's domineering aura and decisiveness. When he saw the evil culprits attacking, he fiercely drew his long sword and battled them. Every move he made was lethal, bathed in the glares of blades and swords. After hundreds of bouts, the battle of life and death came to an end. With a soft thud, his sword pierced the heart of his adversary. Twisting his wrist, Zhongli turned the culprit's heart into a bloody pulp. In this way, the life of the villain culminated in his evil acts. Wonderful! The audience's blood boiled with excitement. They applauded and cheered, even throwing spirit stones onto the stage out of pure excitement. There were too many people listening to the storytelling, and no vacant tables remained. Zhongli had to share a table with strangers. Fellow Taoist, is this seat occupied? Zhongli found a table occupied by 3 people. No, feel free to sit, the 3 replied casually. After a story was told, the storyteller took a drink of tea to soothe his throat, giving the audience a moment to discuss the unfolding plot. The three people at Zhang Li's table were no exception. There are 70 or 80 versions of The Legend of the Human Emperor Zhang that are popular in the market. Personally, I find this version the most satisfying. It is decisive in killing and ruling, showing exactly how a strong person should be. I beg to differ. This version ranks second in my heart. He couldn't have possibly grown through killing. I believe the version where he grows through strategic battles is the best, The Legend of the Human Emperor Zhang. The two men started arguing about which version of The Legend of the Human Emperor Zhang was the best. Seeing this, the third person quickly intervened and changed the subject. There is no better or worse in literature. There's nothing worth arguing about. Even though we can't meet the human Emperor Zhang in person, we can get close to him through stories. It's as if he's sitting right next to us. Don't you agree, brother? When the third person addressed Zhang Li, he was stunned. He's not just sitting next to you, he really is right beside you. His statement brought laughter to the table. What a true fan of storytelling you are, brother, to be so immersed. I commend thy dedication. After the storyteller had rested, he cleared his throat, struck his wooden clapper, and ended one story, preparing to start another. The human Emperor Zhang has saved countless young ladies from the hands of the wicked. Although these women were barely clothed, calling him their benefactor, Zhang, being a gentleman, never took advantage of their vulnerability. He saw to it that all these pitiful women were returned to their homes before he started his journey. One of the people sitting next to Zhang Li suddenly expressed confusion. Wait a minute, this doesn't align with the story I've heard. Isn't it said that Zhang half-heartedly slept with those women under the same quilt? It was described in great detail. Quote, question mark. Zhang Li was confused. This is the great Zhou, I could sue you for defaming me. His companion smacked the confused man on the head. You're thinking of The Scandalous History of the Human Emperor Zhang. You've mixed up the contents of the book with this storytelling. Oh yeah, you're right, I did mix them up. Question mark. Zhang Li's confusion intensified. Could things get any more absurd? The storyteller began the second story. At the time, the human Emperor Zhang was only at the Golden Core stage. He happened to pass by a small town, where he heard that a malevolent ghost was causing havoc. Many people had been killed by the ghost, and the townfolk were crying out in despair. Being righteous, Zhang had decided to stay and deal with the ghost. Zhang had learned that the ghost was unpredictable and killed without shedding blood. Those who saw it were scared to death, and even several cultivators couldn't deal with it. During the night of his stay, another old man fell victim to the malevolent ghost, who died with an expression of extreme horror. The townspeople said that the ghost was afraid of the yang energy of man and also feared the blood of a black dog. As long as they had these two items, they would be able to kill the ghost. Zhang, armed with his sword, sat by the graveside waiting for the ghost. His swordsmanship was superbly exquisite. Many evildoers and unrighteous individuals died under his blade. Even though Yang's cultivation level was not high at that time, he already possessed the potential to become a great master of the sword Dao. The night was dark and windy, and from a withered tree, an old crow cawed. The ghost crawled out from his cold tomb, and Zhang, with a long sword, smeared with the blood of a black dog, engaged in combat with the ghost. The ghost happened to be a beautiful woman in a red dress. Her methods were mysterious and unpredictable. Even a cultivator at the nascent soul stage could easily succumb to her, let alone Zhang at that time. But Zhang was, after all, Zhang, full of life and vigor. To the ghost, Zhang was a dazzling sun. None of her techniques were able to fully manifest. Zhang took advantage of this and subdued the ghost. Just as he was about to decapitate her and send her to the underworld for reincarnation, he saw the ghost crying her eyes out, accusing Zhang and the town folk of being no better than her. From the ghost's confession, Zhang learned about the truth. Apparently, the ghost was a lady named Ruan, born in a poor family in the town and lived only with her parents. A wealthy family in the town was worried about their deceased son's loneliness in the underworld and considered the idea of a ghost marriage. They picked Ruan, but both she and her parents refused. An argument ensued. Both Ruan's parents were killed, and Ruan was buried alive with the wealthy family's son. Ruan was filled with resentment. After death, instead of going to the underworld, she forcefully remained in the human realm, enduring the torment of red dust. She vowed to make the wealthy family accompany her. Hearing this, Zhang heaved a sigh, releasing the ghost Ruan, and allowed her to drift toward the wealthy household. Those that had died in the preceding days were all members of the wealthy family. Once they saw Ruan, they cried bitterly, admitting their faults, promising to erect a monument and build a chastity arch for her, burn paper money for her, pleading with her to dissolve her grudge and move on to the underworld. Quote, "The hatred toward one's parents' killers is not easily forgivable. Ruan would not relent. In one night, the entire wealthy family was wiped out. Ruan's revenge was avenged. Her soul was scattered. From then on, she was no longer present in the human realm. This was the cost of her forcibly staying." The crowd sighed in sympathy after listening to the story, quite taken aback by the ending. Zhang Li too was moved, surprised to see how Ruan's story had been altered. He thought that if Ruan in the underworld heard about it, she would be pleased. After all, avenging oneself was definitely better than letting Zhang Li avenge her, even if the cost was the dispersion of her soul. The incident in the small town was real, just without the ghost Ruan. There was only Zhang Li, who happened to stay overnight in the small town and had figured out what had happened to Ruan from the crucial clues. When Zhang Li learned that there were people who murdered parents for a ghost marriage, burying people alive, he was immediately filled with anger. He stormed into the wealthy household, killed the mastermind behind the atrocities, and avenged Ruan. The whole process did not involve Ruan the ghost. There was no dispersion of Ruan's soul because the real Ruan had already moved on to reincarnation in the underworld. Chapter 250. Never heard of the River Human Emperor. The story of the Ruan clan arouses much reflection, yet it contains a fatal flaw. It is not that Zhang Li used a long sword to fight ghosts, but the existence of the fearsome ghost, Ruan clan. There are no ghosts in 9 provinces. Many folk tales circulate about ghosts, such as the 7th day after death, the festival of hungry ghosts, paper-burning rituals, and unresolved affairs between the living and the dead, and so on. Even some grand cultivators believe in these things. They have never seen ghosts, but precisely because they haven't seen them, they find the invisible ghosts terrifying. Zhang Li knew clearly, however, that no ghosts would appear in 9 provinces. He had once asked Everlasting Immortal Elder, Sumeru Old Buddha, and Brahma Pagoda. Their conclusions were all the same. Ghosts dwell in the underworld, there are no ghosts in 9 provinces. According to Sumeru Old Buddha, the methods of the underworld are incredibly refined, approaching the level of heavenly and earthly laws. When a person dies, their soul leaves the body and is instantly teleported to the underworld. No one can perceive this process. Not even Sumeru Old Buddha or Brahma Pagoda, who are adept in spatial magic, can sense it, let alone Zhang Li. The process of the underworld reincarnating souls is also undetectable by others. The process of souls going to the underworld comes from the mouths of the great powers in the immortal realm and was transmitted through the Everlasting Immortal Elder. Numerous immortal manuscripts also confirm this point. Everlasting Immortal Elder said that the underworld didn't utilize spatial magic but instead the way of reincarnation. Almost only the people in the underworld know this way. Even the great powers in the immortal realm know very little about it, only a few immortals can understand it. No one in 9 provinces does. If there was any place in the world that could possibly have a connection to the immortal realm, it would be the legendary underworld. Unfortunately, the underworld is even more mysterious than the immortal realm, leaving only fragmented knowledge behind. Perhaps the only way for Zhang Li to get to the underworld is to die once himself. No matter how much Zhang Li wants to reach the immortal realm, he wouldn't go as far as throwing his life away. Mission released. Congratulations to the host for becoming a nascent soul cultivator and gaining a place in 9 provinces. After your breakthrough to nascent soul stage, your divine sense expanded tremendously, causing your body to fall into a coma. A villager from the northern territory of Chengguo found you. While crossing Han Pool, a man-eating demon serpent emerged from the pool, scaring the villagers away and leaving you in a coma behind. You opened your eyes to find yourself face to face with the serpent, a creature worshipped by humans. Please defeat this mid-stage nascent soul demon serpent. This mission can be abandoned. Mission reward: 1 copy of the 100 Poisons Sutra, 1 piece of dragon blood wood, and 1 hidden sect talisman. Man-eating demon serpent, humans as sacrifices. Zhang Li took note of the system's description of this Han Pool demon serpent. The fact that it could be described in this way probably means that the serpent has eaten many humans, causing endless disaster. A beast eating humans doesn't necessarily mean it has learned the way of the demon, it might just find humans delicious. The lifespan of a beast is longer than a human's. A nascent soul stage serpent can live approximately 700 to 800 years. From a timeline perspective, this demon serpent may still be alive. Zhang Li, worried, decided to go to Chengguo to check the situation. Based on the system's description, Zhang Li arrived at the northern border of Chengguo, found the village near the Han Pool, and surprisingly, met an acquaintance. Nianer, what are you doing here? Uncle Zhang. Li Nianer was also surprised to see Zhang Li. It's all because of my unreliable father on their marriage anniversary. He went to the Cloudwater secret area in search of immortal divine sense. Mom was furious when she found out. I came out to avoid the storm and just happened to pass by this place. I heard about a man-eating demon serpent. If it's true, I thought of executing it on behalf of the West Sea Dragon. Li Nianer has half West Sea Dragon blood. Is that demon serpent still alive? Zhang Li was surprised. He came here just in case, not expecting the demon serpent to still be alive. Uncle Zhang, you've also heard of this wicked serpent. Never mind that, please continue. I heard from the villagers that the wicked serpent is very cunning. It hides in the deepest part of Han Pool and never comes out. It's been over 100 years now. Over 100 years. That's quite interesting. If the demon serpent had been causing havoc for over 500 years, Zhang Li could understand. But if it had been over 100 years. An old man tottered out from the village. You two seem to be guests, why not come in for a rest? Zhang Li could see that this old man was the strongest in the village, at the 9th level of Qi cultivation. Unfortunately, his lifespan was almost up, he wouldn't live much longer. Through conversation with the old man, Zhang Li learned that he was the village chief. I've heard there's a demon serpent in the nearby Han Pool. Could you tell us more about it? That's a long story. Our village is near the Han Pool, that's why it's called Han Pool Village. People like to use the water of the Han Pool for bathing because it's believed to have health benefits. About 110 years ago, a huge python emerged from who knows where and took up residence in Han Pool. Someone went to fetch water from the pool one day and was swallowed whole by the python. You could even see the person's face through the snake's belly. Li Nianer imagined the scene and felt a little scared. The python spoke human language and said no one was allowed to tell of what happened today. It also demanded that we sacrifice a man and a woman every year. If we failed to comply, it would wipe out the entire village. We've asked cultivators for help, but all of them were swallowed by the python. Enraged, the python stormed the village and ate more than 10 people. Only then did it quell its anger. Since then, we've never dared to defy it. 50 years passed, and the python shed its skin and turned into a demon serpent. It continued to coil around Han Pool till this day. Snakes have two paths of cultivation, one follows the shape of a snake, the other transforms from snake into a serpent, and then a dragon. Becoming a demon serpent means becoming a nascent soul beast. I don't know how my grandson is doing now, or how his cultivation is progressing. The village chief sighed. Where is your grandson now? Li Nianer was curious. I don't know. He sneaked out of the village when the wicked serpent wasn't paying attention, saying that only by becoming a powerful cultivator could he kill the wicked serpent. Why didn't he seek help from others? Li Nianer couldn't understand the grandson's thinking. Instead of cultivating to nascent soul level himself, wouldn't it be faster to find a nascent soul cultivator for help? Young lady, you really know how to joke. That's a nascent soul beast. We can't possibly afford to engage a nascent soul cultivator to help us kill the wicked serpent. He could ask for help from the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace wouldn't ignore this matter, especially Uncle Zhang. Oh no, Zhang the Human Emperor. Zhang, the Human Emperor. Who? The village chief was bewildered. You haven't heard of Zhang, the Human Emperor? Li Nianer was even more surprised than the village chief. Never heard of him. Then, have you heard of any human emperor? Lu, the Human Emperor. Zhang Li's predecessor was Lu, the Human Emperor, a respectable senior. Then, do you know what year it is now? 4065 in the Yan calendar. Isn't that 500 years ago? Li Nianer couldn't make heads or tails of the situation and looked to Zhang Li for help. You're a wandering disciple of the body incorporating sect, and you need to learn how to solve problems by yourself. If you don't use your mind every day, you'll end up like your dad with a dull mind. Zhang Li shook his head. The young people of today were always asking for help. When he was in the nascent soul stage, he solved problems independently and never asked for help. Li Nianer was scared into pondering where the problem lay. Chapter 251, Return after graduation. Is it time reverting? Li Nianer murmured to herself, quickly rejecting the speculation. If time had reverted 500 years, she wouldn't be here, and Uncle Zhang couldn't possibly appear so idle. Haunted, Li Nianer came up with this absurd idea, shivering. As the daughter of Li Er, she naturally knew there were no ghosts in JoJo. However, knowing was one thing, when faced with unexplainable phenomena, she couldn't help but feel the existence of ghosts in the world. No, no, no. I can't think like this. I am a cultivator. I must face facts and be logical. There are no ghosts in JoJo. Li Nianer tried to convince herself, though her persuasion seemed unconvincing. Did Uncle Zhang and I cross over to another world? Or is the village elder playing a trick on me? Li Nianer brainstormed, reminded of novels she had read, such as Time-Traveling Lovers and Back to the Past to Say I Love You, written by Lust Teacher. Though these thoughts brought her to no useful conclusions. The two of you are likely unable to leave this place. Ever since my grandson ran away, the evil Zhao has intensified its surveillance of the village. Anyone who passes here cannot escape. The old village chief looked at the uncle and niece pair with pity. This place is nearly 10 miles away from the Han Pool. Can the evil Zhao's divine sense reach here? Could it have reached the divinity transformation stage? Li Nianer was amazed. It was difficult to imagine that such a talented monster could reside in this remote, poor location. Progressing from the nascent soul stage to the divinity transformation stage in just 60 years was a remarkable talent. As Li Nianer knew, even Uncle Zhang at her side took a full 6 years to move from the nascent soul stage to divinity transformation. This evil Zhao possesses 1/10 the talent of Uncle Zhang. Zhang Li thought that the girl's appearance took after her mother, and her intelligence took after her father. Whether it's a divinity transformation or not, I don't know. All I know is that the evil Zhao has forced several young people from the village to monitor us. The evil Zhao has given them some advantages, allowing them to cultivate to the 9th level of Qi cultivation. They are domineering in the village, and no one can stop them. There are such cruel and unscrupulous people. Li Nianer frowned. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside, filled with the sounds of gongs, drums, and arguing. Give our children back. The evil Zhao had already eaten 2 people 3 months ago, how can it still want to eat people? Why does Lord Zhao need your permission to act? Back off and scram. You few beasts who assist in evil deeds, do you have any humanity left? Humanity. I hope that thing can save your child from Lord Zhao's mouth. The village elder was all too familiar with this scene, and he stormed out of the house in a rage. What the hell do you bastards want? Outside the door, several young men were dragging 2 children out of the village amid the sound of gongs and drums. The children's parents and villagers tried to stop them, but they were no match for those at the 9th level of Qi cultivation, so they had to watch helplessly as the children were taken away. The 2 children cried fearfully. It broke their parents' hearts to hear. Lord Zhao sent us a message saying that it had just finished its cultivation session and wanted to eat something delicious. It wanted to have tender, young children as snacks. You, old village chief, I'd advise you not to meddle, lest Lord Zhao's next meal be you. Maybe it wants to try some tough meat for a change. The young men laughed heartily, showing no respect for the village elder at all. As they were all at the 9th level of Qi cultivation, and the old village chief was alone and facing the end of his lifespan, he posed no threat to them. You bunch of beasts. Li Nianer's brows furrowed slightly. You wretch, we have been watching you outsiders for some time now. We planned to wait until Lord Zhao had finished these 2 children and then send you 2 over in the next round. But since you're looking for death, you can't blame anyone else. The young men were outraged, preparing to tie up Li Nianer and Zhang Li together. But how could they be a match for Li Nianer? She subdued them all with one move. Here, take your children home. Li Nianer untied the children and handed them back to their parents. Your actions will provoke the wrath of the Jiaolong and bring a total disaster to the entire village. The youth leading the group was frightened by Li Nianer's actions. If the Jiaolong becomes upset, their entire village, along with his underlings, will perish. Suddenly, thick clouds gathered, and thunder echoed menacingly. A suffocating sensation pressed upon them as though a huge stone was weighing down on their chests, leaving them gasping for breath. From a distance, a dark shadow leapt out of the Han pool, its appearance utterly terrifying. The dark shadow swiftly approached, moving as fast as lightning, and within a few breaths, reached the entrance of the village. The shadow resembled a snake, its body deep green, its scales more undulating than any snake's. At the front were 2 talons, powerful and strong like that of an eagle's. True dragons possess the majestic power to command the weather, and this Jiaolong had been fortunate enough to inherit a fraction of a true dragon's ability. The menacing Jiaolong opened its gaping jaws, ready to devour all the villagers. The villagers PAMCKEC1, tailing on their knees begging for mercy. A wild poisonous Jiaolong at the nascent soul stage, without even a dragon's horn. Li Nianer sneered, detached her pendant, and revealed a dragon's horn. Li Nianer, carrying half of the true dragon's blood, naturally suppressed the Jiaolong. Moreover, as a nascent soul cultivator of the body incorporating sect, she didn't think there would be a match for her at this stage. The only challenging part about the Jiaolong in front of her was its poisonous core. However, with a little caution, she wouldn't run into trouble. Although Li Nianer had hoped to slay the Jiaolong, someone else beat her to it. Jiaolong, put an end to your madness. An energetic young man descended from the sky, engaging in a fierce battle with the Jiaolong. This unexpected young man turned out to be another nascent soul cultivator. That's my grandchild, Tong. The village chief was overjoyed, unable to believe his grandson, now a successful cultivator, had returned at such a critical moment. Tong demonstrated impressive fighting skills, gradually overpowering the Jiaolong. In the end, Tong tore open the Jiaolong, extracted its poisonous core, victorious in his return. Upon Tong's intervention, the heads of the restless youths fell to the ground. Tong, is it really you? The village chief's hands trembled, tears streaming down his face. He thought he was dreaming. Grandfather, I've come back. Tong chuckled, scratching his head bashfully. Good boy, you're not late at all. The village chief could not stop his tears. Tong then turned to thank Li Nianer and Zhang Li. Seeing the Jiaolong defeated and Tong returned, the village threw a large banquet. Today, with Tong at the center of attention, the celebratory activities were endless. Li Nianer and Zhang Li, having received an invitation, sat at the table with the village chief. Li Nianer frowned. She had a feeling something was wrong but couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. Tong, quickly tell us where you've been since you left the village. The village chief cheerfully patted Tong's head. Tong was enjoying the attention, showing no signs he was a nascent soul cultivator who had just engaged in a bloody battle. After leaving the village, I traveled far and wide, searching for a solution to help our village, but I couldn't find any good leads. One day, I stumbled upon a secret realm. In there, I acquired the cultivation technique called, One Thought Changes Heaven and Earth. It's a powerful technique that can lead to immortality and is associated with illusion. Unfortunately, the rules of the secret realm were quite unique. One could only leave if they reached the nascent soul stage. So, I honed my skills within the secret realm, studying the way of illusion, practicing, One Thought Changes Heaven and Earth. Eventually, I reached the nascent soul stage and was allowed to leave the secret realm. Fearing the Jiaolong continuing to harm people, I rushed back to the village. Thankfully, I wasn't late, and no significant disaster occurred. Having recounted his experiences, Tong let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 252. I didn't come late, I didn't tea. Yeah, it's really quite a coincidence. You're very lucky, Zhang Li said cheerfully, raising his cup of tea and clinking it against Ah Tong's cup of wine. Ah Tong always suspected that Zhang Li was hinting at something in his words, but after some contemplation, he couldn't discern any problems and simply responded with a polite smile. Uncle Zhang, you've reached a conclusion. I have a sort of idea. The village had been celebrating for 10 days, and Ah Tong had stayed there for the same period, always wearing a smile on his face as he kept the village elder company. 10 days later, Ah Tong bid the elder farewell. Grandpa, the 9 provinces are vast and our village is just a humble corner. I want to journey out and see the world. The elderly village head was reluctant to let him go, but he knew Ah Tong had grown up, and that the small Han Pool village had become a constraint for him. So, he tearfully bid him goodbye. After Ah Tong left, Li Nianer felt dizzy as the world around her suddenly changed. The pendant on her chest glowed and she found herself standing at the entrance of the village again. You two, why not come inside and have a rest? The village head walked out of the village and greeted them. Chief, don't you recognize us? The village chief looked at Li Nianer and Zhang Li in confusion. I'm sorry, my memory is not very good. Where have I met you two before? It's fine. Li Nianer shook her head, saying nothing more. Familiar scenes played out once again. The village chief talked about the wicked dragons, a group of young people attempting to offer a child to them. This time, however, Li Nianer chose not to interfere. Perhaps the behavior of these young people had sparked the village's anger, causing many people to blame and stop them. They were just Qi cultivation stage 9, how could thousands of Qi cultivation stage 3 people not be able to defeat them? With the villagers united, the 2 children were saved. The evil dragon, furious, emerged from the Han Pool and came to the village entrance, intending to devour everyone. It was killed by Ah Tong, who descended from the sky. The villagers celebrated, wine glasses clinked together, just as before. Senior Tong, how many times exactly has this identical illusion been performed? Li Nianer finally couldn't help but ask during the banquet. At this point in the events, Li Nianer could definitely discern that something was amiss. The whole thing, from start to finish, had been an illusion, a constantly repeating illusion. Illusion? What illusion? Ah Tong was taken aback, not understanding what Li Nianer was talking about. Senior Tong, when the same thing happens twice, even I can see that it's an illusion. Comrade, you've been trapped in your own illusion for 500 years, aren't you willing to wake up? The illusion shattered, revealing the actual scene to the pair. The entire village looked as though it had been ravaged by a hurricane. Houses had collapsed and it was a complete mess. Decayed with time, the villagers' corpses were reduced to mere skeletons, each in different positions. Some had fallen on rooftops, some had been crushed by grinding stones, some had died while attempting to protect their children. The only commonality between these skeletons was that they all seemed to have attempted to flee the village. But it was clear that they had all failed. Li Nianer could imagine the terror Thu must have felt in their final moments. In the middle of the village lay the massive skeleton of the evil drawn. The middle-aged Ah Tong, now with an aged face, was holding the skeleton of the old village chief, his face streaked with tears. Grandpa is still alive, uncle and aunt are still alive, everyone is still alive. I didn't arrive too late, I didn't. A cultivator of the body integration realm was crying like a child in front of them. Perhaps in Ah Tong's eyes, he was still just a child who had lost his only family and was unwilling to face reality. In reality, this was only presented to Li Nianer. Zhongli had seen the true state of Hanpool village with his divine sense when he arrived. The illusion happening within a several-mile radius was the work of a cultivator in the body integration realm. Having seen reality, Li Nianer had a rough guess of what had transpired. What the old village chief had told her must have been true. The evil dragon was causing chaos, devouring countless people, and Ah Tong had secretly run away and, in a secret realm, he found opportunities to learn illusory skills, becoming a nascent soul stage cultivator. Meanwhile, the villagers couldn't endure the evil dragon's tyranny and attempted to resist. Enraged, the dragon unleashed turmoil, its huge body crushing everything in its path, and spewing poison gas. The entire village was a death ground, with no survivors. Ah Tong had arrived too late, and was unable to save anyone. Perhaps he had to watch as the old village chief was killed by the dragon, unable to lift a finger to help him. In a fit of rage, Ah Tong fought the dragon and eventually killed it. But Ah Tong couldn't accept the reality of what had happened, so he created an illusion, repeating it to himself over and over again. I didn't arrive too late, I didn't arrive too late, everyone is still alive. As years passed, Ah Tong's control of illusion magic improved from his regularly repeated illusion. This gradually refined illusion, through which he had to constantly raise his own ability, in response helped Ah Tong reach the body integration realm state. But no matter how many thousands or tens of thousands of times the illusion was repeated, it remained an illusion. Ah Tong couldn't change the fact that he was the sole survivor of Hanpool village. 500 years had passed and the old village chief would have had many reincarnations by now. Zhongli had not immediately dismantled Ah Tong's illusion. He was considering whether to break Ah Tong's fantasy, or to allow him to spend a lifetime living in the illusion. Zhongli chose the former. What Li Nianer did not know was that she was not the only one who had been misled into the illusion. Those who had experienced the illusion just once, had their memories erased by Ah Tong, and were then sent out of the village. This was why Ah Tong's illusion had not been exposed during these 500 years. As for Li Nianer, the pendant her mother gave her blocked Ah Tong's method, allowing her to retain her memories. Zhongli sighed silently to himself. If things had gone according to the system's timeline, he would have killed the evil dragon and gained the opportunity, resolving Ah Tong's problem and leading to a happy ending for the entire family. The reward for this mission, the 100 Poisons Sutra, was likely meant to be used in conjunction with a dragon toxin pill. The mission also rewarded dragon blood wood. The dragon blood wood could be used as firewood to boil the dragon's blood and maximize the physical benefits from the dragon's blood when soaked in it. The third reward, Waga concealment charm Tiano T_ through big divine sense. Had discovered a unique object called the extreme cold frost mirror in the Han pool, which was the reason for its existence. The extreme cold frost mirror constantly released cold energy that could toughen the body when carried around. However, the cold emission was too noticeable, hence the need for the concealment charm to hide the energy. The system was considerate, but unfortunately, Zhongli did not find use for any of the rewards. Also, since the dragon had died hundreds of years ago, the mission was unfulfillable. Zhongli didn't know if the system had considered avoiding the tragedy of Hanpool village. If it did, he might have to reevaluate its origins and objectives. Fellow Taoist, have you ever thought about what expression your grandpa and your uncle and aunt would make if they saw you in your current state? Ah Tong shuddered as though he was seeing his grandpa right in front of him and he dared not meet his gaze. Everyone has their moment to leave. But they all wish their loved ones would remember them, remain strong, and move forward. Time doesn't stop because of anyone's departure, but a person's growth can be obstructed by that departure. Do you really want to live your whole life this way, living in a non-existent past? Ah Tong slowly rose to his feet and thanked Zhang Li. Thank you for enlightening me, fellow Taoist. I have yet to ask your name. You might have heard of my name. I'm Zhang Li. Ah Tong hesitated for a moment, then stammered in response, I hope Zhang Li will excuse my ignorance. This is the first time I have heard this name. Zhang Li appeared undisturbed and did not show any awkwardness. Chapter 253. We are very familiar with Zhang, the human emperor. Tong Lu truly didn't recognize Zhang Li, for Zhang was only in the nascent soul stage when he left the secret realm and was not well known. Tong Lu, trapped in his illusion, had been enacting the same scenario for 500 years and was oblivious to the changes in the outside world. Whether it was Zhang Li becoming the human emperor or him trouncing the heavenly demons, Tong Lu had never heard about it. It doesn't matter, it's normal for you not to know me after isolating yourself for 500 years. Zhang Li emphasized again, he was not embarrassed at all. Friend Zhang is right, perhaps I should try to move on from my past. Tong Lu stood up and, without using any mana, dug a hole using only his physical strength to bury his grandpa, uncle, aunt, and other villagers. He then erected tombstones and engraved the names on them. Zhang Li's words were not a miraculous cure, but they provided Tong Lu with an opportunity to move on. Tong Lu had not completely overcome his mental blockade, but he had taken the first step. Tong Lu thanked Zhang Li and Li Nianer again. I don't have anything to repay you with. These are the things I got from the secret realm, please take whatever you like, friend Zhang. Tong Lu took out some treasures and asked Zhang Li to accept them. These were all high-quality treasures, even those at the body integration realm could use them. There's no need, friend Tong Lu, you just keep them. Friend Zhang, don't be shy. I'm not being shy. After some sincere refusals, Li Nianer suddenly said, Older Tong, Uncle Zhang is the current human emperor, and he is in the Mahayana realm. Mahayana stage. Zhang Li politely nodded. Tong Lu felt quite embarrassed. He thought Zhang Li had humbly declined his offer, yet he found out that Zhang Li was 2 levels higher than him, and even held the title of human emperor. No wonder he didn't want his items. Young one, what about these items for you? Tong Lu turned around, shifting his target. Zhang Li interrupted. Her father is Li of the physical body sect, and her mother is the dragon princess of West Sea. That's how it is. Li name was like thunder in Tong Lu's ears. Even 500 years ago, Li was renowned as a formidable cultivator at the Transcendence Tribulation stage. Moreover, Tong Lu knew that the 4 Sea Dragon Palace was known for its vast territory and riches. The East Sea Dragon Palace was the wealthiest, followed by the West Sea Dragon Palace. Tong Lu considered his next move, pretending as if nothing had happened, then respectfully took his leave. He's a good candidate for a leader, but he's naive and too thin-skinned. He hasn't seen the cruelty of the world and still requires the baptism of red dust. Watching Tong Lu leave, Zhang Li softly murmured. Tong Lu's loyalty is a virtue, but his mentality isn't congruent with his strength, he still has a lot of potential to grow. Zhang Li was curious to see what kind of person Tong Lu would end up becoming, and then he would make his plans. Commander Lu called Zhang Li through the remote communication talisman. What's up, Hall Master, do you remember what day is it in 7 days? Commander Lu asked with a serious expression. The 6th day of February. Commander Lu stared at his master mysteriously, a sense of resentment in his eyes. I haven't experienced senile dementia yet to miscount the dates. The day after 7 days is your 300th anniversary as the human emperor. According to the rules, we should hold a grand ceremony and celebrate throughout the 9 provinces. Celebrating Zhang Li's ascension is a symbol of peace. It's celebrated every 10 years and this year happened to be the 300th anniversary, which would be on an unprecedented scale. All the major powers would come to congratulate, making it a rare grand festival in the 9 provinces that everyone looks forward to. Most importantly, there would be a 10-day-long holiday. Zhang Li said apologetically, I was only joking, as a cultivator in the Mahayana stage, how could I forget such a significant day? Commander Lu quietly looked at his own hall master. If you care, you would indeed remember, but if you didn't, since you remember, I assume you've prepared your speech. Of course, Zhang Li stubbornly claimed, let's hear it. On this sunny and breezy day, I welcome everyone. Please eat and drink to your heart's content. That's it, enjoy the food and drink. Commander Lu sighed resignedly. He knew Zhang Li had long forgotten about this matter. Forget it, leave the speech to me. Zhang Konggu was not reliable for this task. His poor literacy made for a messy and confusing speech. If Commander Mu was asked to write the speech, it would be full of an air of smugness. Commander Huang's dark personality would write a depressing piece. The best writers in Imperial Palace were the couple Ma Zhou, mainly because they had written the most books. Even if he was beaten to death, Commander Lu would never let Ma Zhou's couple write anything. Commander Lu didn't expect Zhang Li to be of much help. The purpose of contacting him was to remind him to come to the Imperial Palace after 10 days. It seemed that a reminder was indeed necessary. Commander Lu stood up. He had more to do than write a speech. Arranging the venue, assigning seats, preparing performance venues, everything needed to be managed by him. After hanging up the communication talisman, Zhang Li thought that Commander Lu was not having it easy, managing the Imperial Palace alone while the rightful master was off gallivanting. Zhang Li considered with the remnants of his conscience to go back to the Imperial Palace to help Commander Lu. Li Nianer expressed her wish to go to the Imperial Palace with Zhang Li, who gladly agreed. The Imperial Palace was located in the heart of the 9 provinces, a separate region that was designed for the human emperor's festivities. At this time, the area surrounding the Imperial Palace was bustling. Countless temporary lodges, wine shops, stalls, commercial streets, and exhibition halls for associations had been erected. After the celebration ended and the crowd dispersed, the owners would dismantle their structures and depart with their earnings. Apart from those who were doing business, there were also ones who were promoting. Fellow Taoist, do you want to join our observing Mahayana sect? One person enthusiastically promoted his sect, hoping to use this opportunity to expand its influence. Observing Mahayana sect, aren't you the senior brother of Observing Stars sect? Someone asked, puzzled. The senior brother of Observing Stars sect responded with a solemn expression, the purpose of our sect is to observe the trajectory of the stars and sense the changes in humanity. However, the stars can be shattered by a cultivator in the integration stage, so how could such items reflect the numbers of humanity? The mighty force of the stars has a limit, but the realm of the Mahayana is infinite. Our sect realized that the Mahayana stage is the root of the changes in humanity, hence we decided to correct our sect's name to better reflect our history. I see, so what is the relationship between Observing Mahayana sect and Emperor Zhang? The senior brother of the Observing Stars sect whispered a secret, we are very familiar with Zhang the human emperor. The bystanders gasped in surprise, I didn't expect that there's such a relationship. I want to join the Observing Mahayana sect. Come, sign here, and press your handprint. From now on, you're one of us in Observing Mahayana sect. The senior brother of Observing Mahayana sect warmly welcomed his new junior brother. Upon hearing the news, people were motivated to join the Observing Mahayana sect. Zhang Li, who was listening on the side, couldn't help but ask, is Zhang the human emperor really familiar with you? In such a crowded place, Zhang Li had changed his appearance. The senior brother of Observing Mahayana sect waved his hand dismissively, that's such a hurtful thing to say. Doesn't familiarity from one side count as familiarity? The bystanders realized they had been fooled, and together they chased out the senior brother of Observing Mahayana sect. Chapter 254, The Redundant Zhang Li. Zhang Li didn't expect that there would be such thing as Observing Mahayana sect. There really are many odd and intriguing occurrences in 9 states. When I first crossed over, 9 states was more serious and solemn. Why is it filled with eccentricities now? Zhang Li pondered, believing that Bai Hongtu must have corrupted the culture of 9 states. Bai Hongtu's crimes were innumerable and diabolically evil. Zhang Li and Li Nianer arrived at the entrance of the Imperial Palace, revealing their true faces. The 2 human Emperor Palace guards were overjoyed, as if they were celebrating a festival. No, it was like a festival. Hall Master, keep up the good work. Zhang Li encouraged. Yes, we will live up to the Emperor's expectations. The 2 guards stood tall, their voices resonated with firm resolve. This is the Imperial Palace, it's magnificent. Li Nianer curiously wandered around. It was her first time visiting the Imperial Palace, and she was filled with curiosity about this place. The Imperial Palace, having been blessed by successive human emperors, has stood on the 9 states continent for 9,000 years. It is unshakable and impervious to the attacks of immortal artifacts. The duration of the Imperial Palace's establishment corresponds to the length of time it has protected 9 states. The human emperor is the faith of the 9 states, and the imperial palace is the holy land in the hearts of the people of 9 states. Zhang Li led Li Nianer to a room. This place was endless and directionless, surrounded by the blackness of the night sky, like a miniverse, vast and intimidating. From the outside, you would never guess that it was this big. There was no ground in this place, and Li Nianer floated in the miniverse, seeing majestic statues. 71 towering statues stood erect, each with distinct features and determined expressions. They were like the gods of mythology who had created the heaven and earth, yet they gave a feeling of inexplicable reassurance. It felt as though even if the sky were to fall, they would be there to hold it up. Li Nianer saw statues serving as swords, their sword intent confronting the stars, statues wielding large hammers, the ground cracking and magma erupting with their roars, statues with exquisite magical techniques, unparalleled magic formations defending against enemies. Although Li Nianer did not recognize these people, she had guessed their identities. These were the spiritual pillars of the 9 states. Zhang Li began to explain, the statues of the successive human emperors are placed here to commemorate their contributions in resisting the heavenly demons and safeguarding the 9 states. It was the second human emperor who thought that there might be many emperors who would die in the future, so he built a bigger place in advance. He invited the Sumi Buddha and the Arhats, using the doctrine of space, took a corner of the universe, placed it here to put the statues, and with the sacrifice of every human emperor, they erected a statue here. To date, there are 71 statues. Zhang Li touched these statues, thinking back on the heroic deeds of his predecessors from the imperial records, he was particularly moved. Too many people had sacrificed themselves over the course of 9,000 years. He laughed, with me here, there won't be any new statues. His tone was relaxed, but Li Nianer couldn't help but believe him. Zhang Li then took Li Nianer to the center of the imperial palace, where Lord Lu was stationed all year round. In the center of the palace, there was a bronze tripod with endless faith power flowing into it. Normally, faith power is weak and undetectable, but the amount of faith power entering here was so great that it was clearly visible. Li Nianer watched as the faith power flowed into the tripod and transformed into an almost transparent fluid that looked like jade, which emanated an immeasurable majestic power. The successive human emperors had used this faith power to resist the extraterritorial heavenly demons. Uncle Zhang, have you never used the power of faith? Li Nianer was surprised. She had heard that successive human emperors would choose to use the power of faith, always maintaining their most powerful stance, ready to fight against the extraterritorial demons. After reaching the Mahayana realm, I stopped using the power of faith and asked the Tao sect's artifact refinement peak to forge this tripod to store the power of faith for the next human emperor. Li Nianer looked at Zhang Li with admiration, and the idea of becoming a human emperor sprouted in her heart. She wanted to become a great person just like Uncle Zhang. At that moment, Lord Lu was assigning tasks to 5 leaders. Kong Hu, you are the one who knows most about food. I'll leave the matter of procuring the food to you. You must not get hungry halfway and eat up half of the food. You always cannot control your appetite when you're hungry. Even when you reach the body integration realm, you never changed. I don't know if it's because of the witch lineage or just your natural disposition. Leave it to me. Zhang Konggu was full of confidence. However, Lord Lu arranged several human emperor palace guards to purchase food with Zhang Konggu, still not quite trusting him. New leader, you are the most familiar with low-level cultivators. I'll leave the task of receiving low-level cultivators to you. Be polite, don't let people say the imperial palace looks down on low-level cultivators. The imperial palace has always treated everyone equally. They do not think low-level cultivators are inferior. After all, everyone started from being low-level cultivators. All right, Leader Huang. Yes, Huang leader was a little excited, feeling there was finally a use for him. You should stay in places with few or no people so that your cultivation technique doesn't affect everyone. Oh, Huang leader was disappointed, and it was clear that his atmosphere was different from everyone else's. Ma Zhou and his wife, you should inform the factions on the list, check on how their performances are progressing. During the celebration, all the major factions would put on performances to lighten the atmosphere. For example, the corpse-driving sect's zombie dance, the 4-Sea Dragon Palace's 4 Dragons Dance, Buddha's Thousand-Hand Guanyin performance, by Hongtu's monologue. However, some attempts to lighten the atmosphere ended up failing, like the Union sect's erotic dance during the last celebration, which did liven things up, but it wasn't quite proper. Hall Master, why are you here so early? Lord Lu's reaction upon seeing Zhang Li was akin to seeing Ma Zhou and his wife giving up on explicit activities, Zhang Konggu studying hard, Bai Hongtu stopping his tomfoolery, and the ladder to immortality appearing. Your reaction doesn't seem to be asking, why are you here so early? It seems like you're asking, how are you still alive? Zhang Li was speechless. I know your reaction is sincere, but can you at least pretend to be calm in front of Li Nianer? I'm here to see if there's anything that needs my help and also to take Li Nianer on a tour of the Imperial Palace. Is there anything I need to do? Why don't you continue to show her around the Imperial Palace? Even if you want to get rid of me, you don't need to make it so obvious, do you? Lord Lu sidestepped to reveal the Emperor's chair behind him. Please take your seat, Hall Master. Nianer, let's go. Uncle Zhang will continue to show you around the Imperial Palace. Actually, Lord Lu was also quite troubled. He was organizing the venue methodically and everything was perfectly arranged. But now, the rare sight of the Hall Master showing up was making it difficult to handle the situation. What should he do with this extra person? Leader Huang seems lonely, perhaps you and Nianer could keep him company. Zhang Li has never felt like such a third wheel before. Leader Huang was idle, and Lord Lu shunted him aside. The Emperor, Zhang Li, was idle, and Lord Lu put him with Huang leader. Zhang Li felt that Lord Lu was sorting the trash. Zhang Li had no choice. There were only a few places in the Imperial Palace that were open for visit, other areas were either confidential or uninteresting to visit. So he could only use the excuse of caring about his subordinate, to go and check on Huang leader. Chapter 255, The World Where Only Commander Huang is Injured. When Zhang Li found Commander Huang, he was sitting next to a stall, chatting with the stall owner. This place was quite remote, the stall didn't have much business, with Commander Huang being the only customer. The stall owner was dressed in a grey robe, sitting behind a small table covered with a white cloth. Behind him, a flag was erected, making him look like a fortune teller. The flag read, Psychological Counseling. Quote ? Zhang Li was astounded by this emerging industry in Zhouzhou. Psychological counseling. Commander Huang was drawn towards the flag, which was why he stopped and started the conversation with the stall owner. As you can see, my stall aims to provide psychological counseling and guide people through life. The stall owner said with some melancholy, even the peaceful Zhouzhou has its struggles and casualties. Despite the significant progression it has made over the past 500 years, it still falls short when compared to the Mingzhong world. I heard that the Mingzhong world is peaceful and open and hasn't had a murder in years. Although Zhouzhou might be powerful, its level of social stability is still lacking. Cultivators are constantly faced with the risk of injuries and deaths. Along the way, psychological barriers are bound to develop. I too have experienced a tragic period, thinking life was meaningless and was better off dead. But then I realized that this was a way of evading, and I should confront my tragic life head-on. Later on, I thought that my experience wasn't unique. There must be many cultivators under huge psychological pressure, contemplating suicide at their lows. If this is the case, why don't I help the masses by giving them the psychological guidance they require? In its own way, it's a form of kindness and good deeds. Your insight is exceptional, indeed an ambitious endeavor. Commander Huang was impressed by the stall owner's character. It's embarrassing to mention that while you're busy saving the world, I've been immersed in my own misery and trapped in a bubble of loneliness. In front of you, I feel somewhat insignificant. Upon saying this, Commander Huang's eyes teared up, and the atmosphere around him became gloomy. Not at all, my stall is here specifically for relieving people's worries. The stall owner waved his hand, unswayed by Commander Huang's cultivation aura. May I ask for your name? My surname is Huang, and I am a commander at the Imperial Palace. Commander Huang went on, I have always been unlucky since I was young. I was born in a small mountain village. One day, I wanted to go see the city, so my father took me along to the market to sell grains, with me on one side of the carrying pole and the grains on the other. After selling all the grains, he forgot about me and went home alone. I was too young then, didn't remember the way back home, and wandered around aimlessly. A human trafficker noticed that I was by myself and sold me to a demon cultivator. That demon cultivator's cultivation technique was called the tearful heartbreak technique. The more tragedies he created, the faster his cultivation would progress. He intended to torture me for his cultivation, but luckily, he went mad in cultivation and burned himself to death. Quote, I was only 3 years old at that time and knew very little about cultivation, let alone what demon cultivation and righteous paths were. I didn't even know about the existence of the spiritual energy diagram, a preliminary cultivation technique, and started practicing tearful heartbreak technique without any knowledge. I was trapped in the cultivation cave, and only by practicing the tearful heartbreak technique could I leave the cave. There was neither food nor water in the cave, so I was forced to practice this technique in order to leave. It was only later when I learned more about cultivation that I realized this technique was no good. Unfortunately, it was already too late by then. The technique had intertwined with my spiritual root, and it became impossible even to abandon my cultivation and start over. Fortunately, I have always been unlucky, so I do not need to deliberately create tragedies. I am the greatest tragedy myself. When I was breaking through from chi cultivation to the foundation establishment stage, something went wrong during the spiritual energy transformation and I fell from the 9th layer of chi cultivation back to the 8th. From there, I cultivated back to the 9th layer again and tried to reach the foundation establishment stage, but the spiritual energy transformation went wrong again, and my cultivation fell back to the 8th layer of chi cultivation. Your foundation establishment is very solid. The stall owner was at a loss for words with a twitching mouth corner. During the core formation, I found a quiet cave. Unexpectedly, I encountered a mudslide. I was buried in the mud right after the successful core formation and almost suffocated. Later, I joined a team for an adventure. The team consisted of 4 men and 3 women, of which 3 couples decided to retire from the Jonghu, leaving me alone. I also tried to establish a sect, but due to poor management, I was driven out by financial losses. I went to a temple for a fortune prediction. Every time I drew, it was an unlucky slip. Eventually, on one occasion, I drew a moderately lucky slip. I was overjoyed until I found out that all the slips inside the barrel were of good or very good luck, and there was only one moderately lucky one. There was also a woman I once liked and vowed not to marry anyone else. Later on, I found out that her son was the same age as me. The stall owner, despite his previous experiences with different characters due to his work, had never encountered someone as unfortunate as Commander Huang. It's a miracle he managed to stay alive until now. It must be the blessings of the human emperor. In truth, isn't it the case that tragedies happen to everyone? The stall owner recounted his own story. I had some property in the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. My family was relatively well off. I grew up with my younger sister, who is my only family. We were very close, consider her as my pillar of support. I really wouldn't know what to do without her. Who would have thought that my sister would disappear on an assignment for 30 years? Then suddenly, she reappeared, telling me she fell in love with her assignment target, wanted to get married and leave the organization. She even invited me to her wedding banquet. I was so shocked that I coughed up blood for 3 days, couldn't get back on my feet, and left the organization. It took me years to understand that it was inevitable that my sister was going to get married someday. Holding on to the past was not going to let me have a future. After realizing this, I had a radical enlightenment and decided to offer psychological counseling. Though the store owner's experience couldn't compare to Commander Huang's, it was still a sad tale. This made Commander Huang feel a little better. "Brother," a crisp voice full of surprise rang out, and the store owner turned around quickly. It was his sister who had gotten married. He couldn't help shedding tears. "Why aren't you at your in-laws?" Seeing her brother, the sister broke down in tears. "Don't even mention that faithless man, he's already dead." The sister spoke bitterly but laughed just as quickly. "Brother, shall we go home?" "Yes." The store owner was overjoyed. He packed up his table and chairs and left with his sister. As the Tian Sha Pavilion and other killers vanished with the Tianyuan Emperor city, she thought that her brother, who was the pavilion master, must have died in that disaster. She was overwhelmed with grief. Later, her husband died mysteriously in the Great Zhou dynasty. She didn't even know who was responsible. Whilst sorting through her husband's belongings, she discovered that her husband and the deputy head of the Tian Sha Pavilion were colluding, planning to use her. Her marriage was an absolute conspiracy. Her husband merely wanted to toy with her body. She was in deep sorrow and had come to the vicinity of the imperial palace, hoping that the festivities would help her momentarily forget about everything. Upon arriving here, she heard about a highly skilled psychological counselor and decided to pay him a visit. The psychological counselor turned out to be her brother. That led to the touching reunion of the siblings, which moved Commander Huang so much he couldn't help but cry inconsolably. Finally encountering someone as unlucky as himself, only for them to immediately find their long-lost sister. The stools were taken away, and Commander Huang was left standing by himself with nowhere to sit. Zhang Li felt that it would be better to leave Commander Huang alone to calm down, quickly urging Li Nianer to leave. Chapter 256, Wu Ji's Dream. Feeling that the task of counseling Commander Huang was too arduous, Zhang Li, being a mere Mahayana realm practitioner, perceived it as too challenging and decided to let Commander Huang heal himself. He called the nearby patrolling guards, advising them not to approach Commander Huang, and also to keep others away. Commander Huang, overwhelmed with sorrow, unconsciously radiated a gloomy atmosphere, causing even those at the divinity transformation stage who came near to lose control of their emotions and weep. Therefore, the best course of action was to leave Commander Huang alone. The guards, following the hall master's instructions, thought about it and surrounded Commander Huang with a white line, setting up a sign outside the circle. Construction in progress. Entry prohibited. The Human Emperor celebration was taking shape, with hotels prepared for various powerful forces, waiting for their arrival. Each powerful force was accompanied by a performance troupe, and as the host, the Imperial Palace couldn't just let them rent their own rooms. Even before the Human Emperor celebration had begun, traces of Zhang Li could be seen everywhere, masks, statues, and amulets all crafted in his likeness. Every little detail had been signed off by the Imperial Palace, ensuring perfect authenticity. Do you have any amulets that have been consecrated by the Human Emperor? A young monk asked a merchant. Two monks standing next to him surreptitiously sent him a sound transmission, their tone brimming with respect. Enlightened one, our Buddhism sect handles all consecrations. Why would you want to buy a Human Emperor consecrated amulet here? Wouldn't that damage our sect's reputation? Because the Human Emperor is powerful. Wu Ji responded, providing a concise and compelling reason. We don't have any amulets consecrated by the Human Emperor. Okay, then give me one Human Emperor mask. 5 low-level spirit stones. The guards were taken aback, startling the merchant, that expensive. Though not too much, 5 low-level spirit stones were not to be squandered, especially not to become a sucker for obvious exploitation. Wu Ji waved his hand, the price is within a reasonable range regarding the extraordinary time and place. I'll take it. Once the enlightened one made a decision, the arhats had no choice but to pay. Buddhist Master Wu Ji, Zhang Li greeted a familiar face as he was strolling through the market. Zhang Li and Li Nianer were eating candied hawthorns, on his treat. Human Emperor. Wielding the Tower of Brahma, Wu Ji greeted Zhang Li with a Amitabha. The arhats that tamed the dragon and the arhat who couldn't be tamed had already established an illusion using Buddhist law, preventing people from recognizing Wu Ji's true identity and making him appear as a harmless young monk. Originally, Li Nianer and Wu Ji were equals. She was once an itinerant preacher of the body incorporating sect, and he was a disciple of Buddha. Who would have thought that Wu Ji would succeed the previous Master Buddha after his demise, making him one of the most respected individuals in Jojo. In honor of the friendship they once shared, Zhang Li helped the Buddhist sect to publicly announce the complete nirvana of the old Buddha Sumeru. Are you performing the Avalokitesvara with 1,000 arms this year? Li Nianer, having watched Zhang Li's 290th anniversary coronation ceremony, had a deep impression of the Buddhist sect's Avalokitesvara performance. She heard from her father that the Buddhist sect usually performed Avalokitesvara at every ceremony. Wu Ji shook his head slightly. We are presenting something different this year. As for what it will be, I asked Nianer to wait until the day of the performance. Quote. He then turned to Zhang Li and asked, there's something I don't understand, may I ask the Human Emperor? Zhang Li nodded, and Wu Ji, bringing only the Tower of Brahma, asked the two arhats to wait for a while. Does the Human Emperor believe in the concept of reincarnation? You are referring to the underworld cycle of life and death. Of course, I believe. Why do you ask? Have you encountered some issues related to this? The Buddhist scriptures state that the underworld balances good and evil. There are 6 cycles of life and death. The virtuous enter the path of righteousness, the evil enter the path of sin. Before reincarnation, they cross the river Lethe, drink Mengpo's soup, and are able to wash away their past, getting reincarnated, becoming a whole new being. Yes, that's what it says. Recently, I've been dreaming and the scenes in my dreams are quite vague. I saw an immortal drunkenly wandering in the Tianhe at night, and a forest of fairy trees blossoming and yielding fruit. These were scenes I have never seen before, and I believe these scenes might take place in the immortal realm. Zhang Li frowned. You're suspecting that these memories are not your own, but of your past life. Yes. Wu Ji nodded. The frequent dreams made him doubt his Buddhist heart, and he began to ponder questions like, who am I, where did I come from, and where am I going? Most importantly, he was afraid that one day he would become the person from his previous life, overshadowing the memories of this life. From what he could tell from his dreams, his past life must have been an immortal who lived several tens of thousands of years. If his past life's memories were to awaken, his 15 years' worth of memories would be nothing in comparison. It would be like a single drop of water merging into the ocean, completely disappearing. He would completely turn into the person from his past life. In Zhongli's eyes, Wu Ji's soul was incredibly powerful, carrying numerous wounds as if they were lightning strikes or burns, not at all fitting for an ordinary child. Zhongli had never mentioned this to Wu Ji, fearing that Wu Ji might develop the same worries. It seemed like his fears had come true. Have you dreamed of any specific people? Could you confirm your past identity? Wu Ji shook his head. I couldn't see clearly, the silhouette in my dreams was blurry, I couldn't even discern whether it was male or female. What do you think? Zhongli asked the silent tower of Brahma. I don't have any particular thoughts. It's just more unfamiliar memories. Wu Ji is still Wu Ji, the tower of Brahma lazily remarked, failing to understand why Zhongli and Wu Ji were so worried. It was as if mocking them, seeing this as an unassailable truth in the mindset of an immortal artifact. Have you asked the immortal Elder Chong Kun? I don't trust him. Wu Ji was inexplicably resistant towards Elder Chong Kun. Could it be that Wu Ji's past life held a competitive relationship with the Elder? Zhongli pondered. That doesn't make sense. Elder Chong Kun is merely an Earth immortal, while Wu Ji's past life was undoubtedly more than a mere Earth immortal, certainly having at least reached the heavenly immortal level. Then why are you discussing this with me? With a bitter expression, Wu Ji said, if one day, my personality changes drastically, I hope the human emperor will not be surprised. If I commit any atrocities after changing my personality, I ask the human emperor to show no mercy. Are you asking me to forcibly send 2 Buddhas into nirvana? You're being rather pessimistic. Wu Ji was thinking about the worst possible scenarios. Zhongli was worried that he might have been possessed by Commander Huang. Zhongli could understand Wu Ji's feelings. After all, he was just a 15-year-old boy. Despite their seemingly impeccable understanding of Buddhism that they appeared as wise and respectable as senior monks, in the face of real-life situations their attitudes completely differed. If it were the old Buddha Sumeru facing this situation, he would definitely not be in Wu Ji's current state. He still needed growth. After sharing his concerns with Zhongli, Wu Ji's mood noticeably improved. When both of them returned, they found the East Sea Dragon King there. Big brother. The Arhat who couldn't be tamed saw the East Sea Dragon King and enthusiastically greeted him. The Arhat who couldn't be tamed was originally known as Arhat who tamed the tiger. However, being a true dragon himself and disliking the name of the Arhat who tamed the dragon, he spontaneously changed his name. The Arhat who couldn't be tamed was justified in doing this. We, the true dragon clan, are honest. We didn't eat from your rice bowl, why should the Buddhist sect use us as stepping stones? The names given to you, Arhat who tamed the dragon and Arhat who tamed the tiger, clearly contradict the principle of equality among all beings. Old Buddha Sumeru felt that his argument was very reasonable, so he agreed. Lucky for him, the ladder to become an immortal had disappeared and all the Buddhas couldn't come down. Otherwise, they would have pinned the Arhat who couldn't be tamed to the ground and given him a thorough beating. The title of Arhat who tamed the tiger wasn't one that could be changed on a mere whim. Chapter 257. To learn the demon tribe's language. Entering the Buddhist path does not mean being heartless. The Arhat who was not subjugated was a compassionate one. He chatted amiably with the dragon kings of the 4 seas, reminiscing about his experiences and insights gained from his years in Buddhism, persuading the 4 dragon kings to convert to Buddhism as well. By then, there would be 5 dragon Arhats in Buddhism, making the dragon clan dominant in Buddhism. The 4 sea dragon kings were delighted to see their brother. They recalled their love-hate stories with the island master of Penglai Fairy Island. These stories were deeply moving, and they persuaded the Arhat who was not subjugated to leave Buddhism to become the 5th dragon king. At that time, they would be able to overpower the island master, with all the oceans of the 9 provinces under the control of the dragon clan. The 5 true dragons laughed heartily, enjoying the harmonious atmosphere. Everyone spoke their own minds and no one listened to each other. The dragon subduing Arhat and Li Nianer watched the 5 silly dragons. Li Nianer was somewhat reluctant to recognize the Western Sea Dragon King as her uncle. Enlightened one. Human Emperor. Quote, the 4 Sea Dragon Kings greeted Wu Ji and Zhongli. How's the preparation for the performance going? To ensure that everything goes without a hitch, we plan to rehearse it again. The East Sea Dragon King respectfully replied, would the human emperor like to watch and make any corrections if needed? No, I'd rather have some anticipation. Having been tormented by Duokai Kingdom's New Year's Eve gala, Zhongli wanted to see a splendid celebration. The 4 Sea Dragon Kings could only regretfully give up this opportunity to get closer to Zhongli. Big brother, we're here for once, why don't we pick up some special products before we leave? The 4 Sea Dragon Kings bid farewell to Zhongli and the others and strolled around the temporary marketplace. The East Sea Dragon King pondered for a while, then waved his hand, buy all the statues of the human emperor and worship them at home. Being affluent, the Dragon Palace saw those expensive statues merely as drops in the ocean. Zhongli and Wu Ji bid farewell. Li Nianer was still holding a luminous pearl. This was a gift from the Western Sea Dragon King, she could play with it. Zhongli noticed that Li was sneaking around in the crowd, looking for someone. Seeing Li Nianer, he clung to her like a drowning man grabbing at straws. Oh, my sweet girl, why did you run away? With you around, your mother would have taken your feelings into consideration and scolded me less. But once you left, your mother wouldn't stop talking, just like the water in the West Sea, said Li. Daddy begs you, please stay with me, for just half a month. Li pleaded earnestly. End your dealings with several women from the White Marsh dynasty, and I will agree to your request, Li Nianer responded, with an impassive expression. She knew her father had dubious relationships with several female demon clans in the White Marsh dynasty. Li froze and awkwardly responded, you've misunderstood. I was just trying to learn the demon language, there's even an eagle demon among them. Do you know how difficult it is to learn eagle language? Li Nianer remained silent, looking quietly at her father. Knowing that he couldn't bluff his way out of this situation, Li could only look to Zhongli for help with pleading eyes. Zhongli asked, puzzled, can't you learn the demon language using your divine sense? Li realizing he couldn't rely on Zhongli, spat out blood in frustration. If Bai Hong were here, at least he could provide some cover. But with Zhongli here, there was no cover to be had, only a target to be hit. A target aiming for the bullseye. With Zhongli's contrary assistance, Li had no choice but to promise that he would cut ties with the several female demons from that day forward. Only then did Li Nianer's expression soften slightly, and she decided to follow Li back. Come out, Zhongli suddenly said, and a young woman with dragon horns, who looked somewhat like Li Nianer, stepped out from the side. Are you Li's wife? Greetings to the human emperor, dragon girl Ao Changchang. You were the one who told Nianer about those several female demons, weren't you? Yes, Zhongli thought to himself, it must have been the case, how else would Li Nianer even know what Li had done? It had been kept a secret until someone told her. Who would know the secrets of a person at the Transcendence Tribulation stage? Only the wife of a person at the Transcendence Tribulation stage, the true dragon, Ao Changchang. Zhongli guessed that Ao Changchang didn't want to expose everything and jeopardize their marital relationship, so she discussed with their daughter, and used her hand to make Li cut off those relationships. Ao Changchang was here in advance because she wanted to witness Li's decision, and she was not worried that Li would discover her. This was the human emperor palace. Who would dare to use their divine sense? Anyone using their divine sense would raise suspicions of lurking around the human emperor palace. Even someone as powerful as Li didn't dare to do so. Then why did you argue with him? Our disagreement was real, no pretense involved, I was genuinely mad. Ao Changchang pouted discontentedly, coming across as somewhat childish. Zhongli decided to comfort her, don't be too angry, Li also has his difficulties. He broke the blue coral tree you gave him and then went through numerous tests to get a fake one from the Cloudwater secret area, just to avoid provoking your anger. Li who was on the verge of touching the Tao of Immortality, inexplicably grew alert, as if sensing something bad was about to happen. Is that so? Thanks for letting me know, human emperor. Ao Changchang sneered, rubbing her hands together, she was itching to have a proper talk with Li. After walking a short distance, Zhongli noticed that a temporary building nearby had a formation concealing its aura. There were people coming and going from time to time, but they couldn't fool Zhongli. He perceived that this building was emitting a sensual aura, as if some male-female activities were taking place within, pondering the Tao of Yin and Yang. Before he made a move, he saw several human emperor palace guards arriving with a search warrant, entering the building and arresting all those inside. The disciples of Union sect and several guests. Despite the guests' faces being masked, Zhongli could discern who they were. The Emperor of Dream River and Emperor Wei. The two claimed they were there doing business. The bystanders sighed at this sight. How swift the actions of the human emperor palace were. They didn't even have a chance to enjoy the services of Union sect before it was banned. The Union sect had only been in operation for half an hour. We were really just discussing business, being naked symbolizes our honesty and integrity, it was all above board, argued the Emperor of Dream River and Emperor Wei. Do you know the origin of handshaking? When two people meet, they shake hands to demonstrate they are unarmed and pose no danger. This is a basic principle of negotiation. Following the ancient customs, we further improved upon this principle. This is a value that should be promoted. The guards were helpless. The two were trying to take a mile after being given an inch. If they weren't worried about causing a scandal, they really wanted to remove their masks. Fortunately, both Emperor of Dream River and Emperor Wei were just pretending to be unyielding. They knew when to yield in their hearts. After a few words, they slinked away downcast. The Master of Heavenly Tao witnessed the whole scene. Looking through the masks, he recognized the true identities of the two and thought this was big news. So he instructed his newly accepted disciple, Lu Kai, to write it down. Use this event as a potential headline for the Heavenly Machine Report, include the portraits of the two emperors, but don't forget to pixelate them, he said. Pixelate their names. Pixelate their faces. After the human Emperor Palace Guard warned the Union sect and prepared to leave, they were stopped by Zhang Li. What happened? Your Excellency, after one of the cultivators received the services of Union sect, he had a major enlightenment. Finding Union sect filthy, he reported everything to us, replied the guard. Zhang Li thought the whole situation could be summed up in a four-word phrase. Chapter 258. By Hongtu, I will make it big for you. Zhang Li, having nothing to do, strolled around for a few days, seeing many interesting things. The White Marsh Emperor, still possessing a childish mentality, disguised herself as an ordinary cultivator, participated in a knowledge contest and claimed first place. Zhang Li spared her some dignity by not revealing her true identity. After all, he himself had competed with the White Marsh Emperor and been outdone, only managing to secure second place. Zhang Li participated in a contest imitating the human emperor, but he didn't even make it past the preliminaries. The King Change of the Confucian sect participated in a poetry convention, nearly claiming first prize. Because the anonymous first-place winner was Dong Zongren, the sect hierarch of the Confucian sect. Many cultivators round by Hongtu's performance amusing and showered him with spirit stones as an encouragement. Zhang Li promptly contacted his parents, the immortal elders, to take the boy home. To prove her musical prowess, the Red Dust Fairy, concealed but for her eyes, performed music of the immortal path on the streets. Her performance was so soothing and melodious, Zhang Li quickly had the pure heart saintess take her back to the Red Dust Pure Land. The leader, Lu, also invited people from the Mingzhong world to the festival. They translated their world's conditions into the language of Zhouzhou and distributed it near the imperial palace, causing a huge sensation. Fortunately, leader Lu had prepared in advance and had withdrawn part of the guard to maintain order. Zhang Li thought the duties of leader Lu were not easy, he had to handle so much every time they held a festival. After several days of preparation, the highly anticipated Human Emperor Festival began amidst a bustling atmosphere. Representatives from various forces sat on the high platform, with Ming Zhang as a guest of honor, attracting much attention. The moment Zhang Li appeared on stage, the crowd below erupted into thunderous applause. Fellow cultivators, fellow Taoists, today, we have gathered to celebrate the 300th anniversary of the 72nd Human Emperor, that is, my ascension to the throne. Here, I, on behalf of the leaders and guards of the Imperial Palace, express my heartfelt gratitude to all cultivators who have made the world of Zhouzhou a better place. For 300 years, I have not forgotten our ancestors' efforts, the attack from the heavenly demons, the sleepless nights of practice, the elevation of cultivation, and the protection of Zhouzhou. As the world of Zhouzhou continues to develop, with its various systems continuously improving, I, as the highest fighting force in Zhouzhou, have reached the Mahayana realm. I can defeat the heavenly demons, and with the joint efforts of all major forces, we have established the Zhouzhou Protective Array with Taoist Strange Soldier as its core, thoroughly eliminating the possibility of heavenly demons attacking. Today, I solemnly announce that the world of Zhouzhou no longer needs to worry about the heavenly demons. Let the festival begin. After Zhang Li finished his speech, the applause from the audience surpassed anything they had seen before. Some cultivators had tears in their eyes as they took out their memory orbs to record this historic moment. The audience sat at round tables, watching the performances. The excellent ingredients purchased by Zhang Konggu were made into various delicacies, laid out on dining tables for people to enjoy at will. People ate delicious food, watched the once-in-a-decade performance, feeling content. The Red Dust Pure Land didn't have any performances but had brought 2 masters of ceremonies to host the festival. I believe everyone has heard about the Mingzhong world. The first performance will be from there. Let's enjoy the mech dance brought by the Mingzhong world. A few dozen mechs took to the stage, performing a dance that seemed strange to the people of Zhouzhou. However, beauty has no boundaries. After a while, the audience gradually got used to this form of dance and applauded enthusiastically. The decision by Ming Zhang to let the mechs perform was made after careful consideration. The mechs are the pinnacle of their world's technology. Showcasing them to Jojo could demonstrate their technological level. Meanwhile, Jojo had puppets similar to the mechs, but the mechs didn't use spiritual power, which was the biggest difference and the most eye-catching feature. With the mech performance, more and more cultivators grew interested in the Ming Zhang world, accelerating the exchange of talents. As a result, just as Ming Zhang had anticipated, some cultivators developed an interest in the Ming Zhang world and planned to apply to go there. What are you guys from the Dao sect going to perform this year? Group comic dialogue. Zhang Li curiously looked at Bai Hongtu. It was almost time for the Dao sect's performance. Why hadn't Bai Hongtu left the stage yet? Bai Hongtu sneered disdainfully, do I seem like someone without an innovative spirit? Just watch how grandly I put on a show for you. Zhang Li muttered, I felt the establishment of the Three Purities comedy sketch was already innovative enough. Having said that, Bai Hongtu jumped down off the steps. Now, we would like to invite Sect Master Bai Hongtu from the Dao sect for his performance, of crossing the heavenly tribulation. The two disciples from the Red Dust Pure Land were dumbfounded, questioning if they had read the script wrong. Quote ? Quote. Zhang Li widened his eyes, crossing the heavenly tribulation in public, aren't you trying to make a spectacle of us? Bai Hongtu stood in the center of the stage, confidently smiled, pointed at the sky, the weather changed suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell, and struck him into a charred stick. Luckily the stage was big enough, otherwise, the fear was that the heavenly tribulation could also include the audience in its range, everyone would have to cross the tribulation together, and none could survive. The air pressure dropped, the sky darkened, only the figure on the stage seemed eternal, the lightning flashing, illuminating Bai Hongtu's unyielding figure. The tribulation was vast, incinerating everything, causing vibrations within a few thousand kilometers. The lightning blazed like fire, the heavenly tribulation was turned into molten lava, carrying the wrath from heaven to earth, piercing through the world, reverberating through the 9 provinces. The heavenly tribulation targeted only Bai Hongtu. The audience below the stage and the representatives on the stage were merely spectators. But being a spectator, they were still astonished and terrified, their hearts pounding with fear. Those cultivators using the reflection balls to record the ceremonies had trembling hands. Ming Zhang was scared, he thought his robot dance was quite excellent, who knew he would be upstaged right after, are the performances in the 9 provinces always this hardcore? Zhang Li grimaced, there are not this many tribulations available for performances in the 9 provinces. That's a bunch of bull. Zhang Li had initially believed Bai Hongtu was practicing some great divine skill and had to cross this tribulation. Who could have expected this lad not to just cross any tribulation, but the tribulation of achieving immortality? Bai Hongtu, who was undergoing the tribulation, was shockingly sleeping soundly while thunder crashed nearby. This is the fearless unmoving tribulation. Zhang Li introduced, this was also my first tribulation. Ming Zhang, who had no understanding of the heavenly tribulation, asked. What does that mean? The Ruyi Gourd chimed in, each bolt of lightning in the fearless tribulation surpasses the cultivator's limit. Trying to withstand it will only lead to total annihilation. Only with an unwavering Tao heart, remaining fearless in the face of the heavenly tribulation, can one overcome this tribulation. You see, Bai Hongtu is sleeping, which shows he is not afraid of the lightning, and therefore the lightning will not strike him. Ming Zhang empathetically thought, even if knowing there is no danger by being unafraid, facing the world-ending lightning right above his head would still cause involuntary fear. Bai Hongtu slept soundly and successfully crossed the fearless unmoving tribulation. Then, 9 looped lightning bolts appeared in the sky. This is the 9 circular landing tribulation. There are no tactical measures for this one, only raw endurance can survive it. You must have maximized your cultivation from the Qi cultivation stage to the tribulation stage to barely survive this tribulation. The Ruyi Gourd explained, among the various tribulations one can face on the path to immortality, the 9 circular landing tribulation is considered particularly terrifying. Encountering this kind of tribulation shows Bai Hongtu's potential. The looped lightning bolts emitted a daunting momentum, with spiritual energy in chaos and space in shambles. It seemed as though it wanted to grind out the bones and blood, the body and soul of the cultivator. During this tribulation, Bai Hongtu could only use his spiritual energy and cannot draw from external sources. Any of the looped lightning bolts are enough to separate the soul from the body of a body integration realm cultivator, leading to reincarnation. This shows how terrible it is. The bright white light made it impossible for everyone to open their eyes properly. A looped lightning bolt encircled Bai Hongtu, making a sizzling sound that made everyone grimace. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, the ninth one. Exactly 9 lightning bolts trapped Bai Hongtu. When the crowd finally acclimatized to the bright light and barely managed to get a glimpse of Bai Hongtu on the stage, they found Bai Hongtu gyrating his waist, using the looped lightning as hula hoops, managing to juggle 9 at a time. Ming Zhang turned to ask the Ruyi Gourd, barely survives. The Ruyi Gourd awkwardly replied, or maybe not barely. Chapter 259, Nezha causes havoc in the sea, the Great Zhou version. When Bai Hongtu declared he'd perform his Transcendence Tribulation stage act, Gigi eagerly presented a pre-prepared heart-saving pill. However, Zhang Li had a resilient heart and didn't need the pill, which was a bit of a disappointment for Gigi. The center of the stage was filled with a dazzling array of lightning. Bai Hongtu's expressions were hard to decipher, but Zhang Li could see them clearly. Bai Hongtu was grinning and playing with a hula hoop, appearing to be at ease when, in fact, he was shuddering involuntarily from electric shocks. The force of the heavenly tribulation was so strong that it incinerated Bai Hongtu's clothes into ashes. In other words, he was now stark naked. The Dao sect master's public streaking. Zhang Li rubbed his face. This second stage performance was surely a big one. After the heavenly tribulation stage, the stairway to immortality didn't materialize. As people were still adjusting to the change in light, Zhang Li wrapped Bai Hongtu in a white sheet, covering him up and leading him back to the stands. That damned heavenly tribulation, it's not fair. They said it wouldn't translate to my clothes. How come it didn't even leave me a pair of underwear? Bai Hongtu grumbled. He wrapped himself tightly in the sheet, leaving only his head exposed as he berated the heavenly tribulation, showing no signs of joy for successfully passing it. Zhang Li smacked him on the back of his head, accusing him of pretending. So far, only 2 people in the Kyushu region had passed the Transcendence Tribulation, Leader Lu and Li Er. Bai Hongtu was the third, and undoubtedly the most noticeable one. How does it feel to pass Transcendence Tribulation for the first time? Casually asked Zhang Li, causing the others to listen intently. Bai Hongtu scoffed, how am I supposed to feel? I feel like I could become an earth immortal at any moment. All I lack is a baptism of immortal power. It's frustrating. On the other hand, the Mahayana realm, there's no way I can touch that. Honestly, if you hadn't already reached it, I'd still be doubting its existence. Tell me again, how do you break through to the Mahayana realm? Zhang Li glared, I've already told you how to break through to the Mahayana realm several times. You just can't seem to understand my theory. What am I supposed to do about that? Bai Hongtu tried to joke his way out of it, Zhang bro, you're my bro. Can't you put in a bit of effort, simplify the theory so that simpletons like us at the Transcendence Tribulation stage can understand? Zhang Li agreed, as he had always been trying to simplify and deconstruct the theory of the Mahayana realm, although it had not been making much progress. The power of Bai Hongtu's tribulation was so tremendous that it shattered the entire stage. Leader Lu suppressed a bout of nausea and dispatched additional personnel to repair it. Next up, we have the Buddhist sect's performance, rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors is an ancient sport that not only tests one's luck but also their skill and speed. Let's wait and see what surprise the Buddhist sect has for us. While the name of the Buddhist sect's performance was puzzling, the host had seen someone who had survived the Transcendence Tribulation, so he didn't think there was a problem and welcomed the performance with applause. The audience, still reeling from the magnificent remnants of the devastating heavenly tribulation, took a while to recover but also began to applaud. 2 holy bodhisattvas lightly stepped onto the stage, their hands pressed together, faces full of compassion. Suddenly, thousands of hands appeared behind them, some clapped, some clenched in a fist, and others stretched out 2 fingers. The 2 bodhisattvas were actually using the 1,000-hand Guanyin gesture to play rock, paper, scissors. There were thousands of hands on either side, each corresponding to the other, extending either scissors or a hammer to see who would win. Only when one side had all its thousands of hands beating the other side would it be considered a victory. This spectacle had many flaw points, so many that Zhang Li didn't even know where to begin his criticisms. Whose idea was this? The Arhat who broke the dragon and the Arhat who didn't break the dragon looked at each other, then simultaneously pointed to the Vanshan Tower. This was Buddha's proposal. The Vanshan Tower didn't see any problem with this performance, and they proudly said, isn't a show supposed to be enjoyable and surprising? Don't you think the postures of the 2 bodhisattvas using their 1,000-hand Guanyin is gorgeous? That's enjoyability. Do you know when the game will end? That's the surprise. This performance is just perfect. This performance was very good, don't do it again next time. Hearing the praise, Vanshan Tower felt contented. The two bodhisattvas couldn't possibly finish their game in a day. Zhongli communicated with the two bodhisattvas, urging them to end the performance, with one side all choosing rock and the other side all choosing scissors. The Confucius sect performed on language evolution. They sifted through ancient books, studied history, mapped out the process of language evolution, refined the scripts, and then on the stage, used silent words and exaggerated actions to display how thousands of languages came together to form the Kyushu language, giving a feeling of epicness. With the performances by the Taoist and Buddhist sects as reference points, the Confucian sect's spectacle seemed too normal, creating an out-of-place atmosphere on the spot. "We lack creativity," Director Dong commented. Zhang Li interjected, No, the way you are currently is fine, no need for more innovation." Having finally found a normal person, Zhang Li couldn't let them go without a comment. Next, we have a drama performed collaboratively by the Great Zhou Dynasty and the Four Sea Dragon Palace. Li Nezha makes a scene in the sea. Quote? Zhang Li was confused. Who is this Li Nezha? Didn't the name sound a bit off? He wasn't surprised that the tale of Nezha causing unrest in the ocean was in existence in Kyushu, because he was the one who disseminated it. It was very popular, as Kyushu people loved stories related to gods and ghosts. The performance on stage was progressing in an orderly manner. In a location near the coast of the Great Zhou Dynasty, there was a place called Chentang Pass. Its commander was named Li Jing, and his wife was Mrs. Yin. Mrs. Yin gave birth to her third son. Since the eldest son is Jinja, and the second son is Muzha, this third son should be called Shuizha, Li Jing suggested. Shuizha doesn't sound good, let's just call him Nezha. Mrs. Yin disliked her husband's choice of name. Alright, let's call him Nezha. My third son's name is Li Nezha. Li Jing laughed heartily, thinking his wife was quite cultured. Li Nezha had a talent for cultivation, and his skills progressed rapidly. As the Great Zhou Dynasty was adjacent to the East Sea, the third son of the Dragon King stirred up a storm, causing immense trouble for Chentang Pass. He even threatened to devour the children of the fishermen. Unwilling to stand down, Li Nezha fought the Dragon King's son for 300 rounds. In the end, the Dragon King's son was defeated and stripped of his dragon tendon. Furious, the East Sea Dragon King, along with his three brothers, transformed into their dragon selves. With the Dragon Ball in hand, they threatened the Chentang Pass, demanding that Li Jing surrender Li Nezha, or they would flood the Chentang Pass. The Four Sea Dragon Kings mustered unlimited mana, forming a 1,000-foot-high tsunami that even cast over the sun. Chentang Pass was utterly insignificant in the face of such a disaster. Though powerless, Li Jing remained stubbornly unyielding. Mrs. Yin heart-wrenchingly cried, and Li Nezha stepped forward bravely, stating, "Old Dragon King, here I am, what are you going to do to me?" The East Sea Dragon King bore his heinous teeth and ruthlessly declared, "Of course, we'll charge you for intentionally causing harm, and you'll be sent to the Great Zhou to face punishment." Zhang Li felt this was a tad different from what he'd previously remembered. Chapter 260, The Celebration Ends. At this point, a voiceover intones, "Li Nezha is a citizen of Great Wei. According to jurisdiction of citizenship, Great Wei has jurisdiction. The act of Li Nezha injuring the third son of the Dragon King took place in the nearby sea, which is under the jurisdiction of Great Wei. Hence, according to territorial jurisdiction, Great Wei also has jurisdiction. As per litigation law, Chentang Pass holds jurisdiction rights. However, considering Li Nezha's status, as per the recusal system, the jurisdiction has to be transferred to another city. The third son of the Dragon King belongs to a foreign nationality. Foreign-related criminal cases require higher-level jurisdiction, hence they can only be under the jurisdiction of a prefecture. After probing, the magistrate began the trial. The third son of the Dragon King intentionally hurt a child. Li Nezha acted in defense to protect the child and injured the dragon. His actions are considered legitimate self-defense and do not constitute intentional harm. The East Sea Dragon King objected and continued, "I'll sue Li Nezha for deliberately injuring precious animals." The magistrate calmly replied, "According to the laws of Great Wei, offenses of intentionally harming precious animals apply to creatures without intelligence. Dragons are intelligent beings, hence, they are not under the purview of this offense." Moreover, Li Nezha was only 11 years old when the incident happened, failing to meet the 12-year-old age requirement for criminal responsibility under Wei law. Therefore, he does not bear criminal responsibility. Hence, the magistrate made the ruling. In conclusion, Li Nezha is innocent. However, since Li Nezha caused the injury, he should make civil compensation. If there are any objections, an appeal can be made to the higher authority within 10 days. The East Sea Dragon King protested, appealing the case all the way to the highest levels of authority, right up to GG. GG announced his final verdict: dismiss the litigation request, uphold the original judgment. The East Sea Dragon King was disheartened, but still accepted the final judgment. The performance ended, leaving Zhang Li rooted in place, his mind a whirl of thoughts. So, how was it? Was the performance okay? GG boasted to Zhang Li. He'd slightly tweak the story of Nezha causing an uproar in the sea, to make it fit the circumstances of Great Wei. You're quite something. I remember you telling the story of Chen Xiang splitting a mountain to save his mother. I've tweaked it into Chen Xiang's jailbreak. What do you think? GG thought he'd done well. Based on Chen Xiang splitting a mountain to save his mother, he could introduce the law of immortals not engaging with mortals, and then go into a detailed discussion about bad laws not being legal. It should be quite an interesting watch. Zhang Li tightened his grip on GG's shoulder. As I've helped you seize the throne once, I'm practically begging you, leave me some fond childhood memories. This was the first time GG had seen Zhang Li like this, so he abandoned his idea of modifying the story of Chen Xiang splitting the mountain to save his mother. After the end of Li Nezha's stirring up the sea, it was the turn of the corpse-driving sect to perform. Seeing a banner rising from the crowd, Zhang Li thought the corpse-driving sect was quite popular and that they were being welcomed. To his surprise, the banner read, "Corpse-driving sect, no middlemen, best afterlife for the departed, contact corpse-driving sect for the sale of the deceased remains, bulk discounts available." Quote, "The damn corpse-driving sect is causing trouble again." Lu, the commander, had also seen the banner and promptly ordered the guards to take down the banner. The corpse-driving sect's performance was a skit. It was as boring as the Duokai Kingdom's skit and was more of an extended ad for the corpse-driving sect rather than a real skit. On stage, the son was holding his dying father and sobbed, "Father, please don't die." The father extended his trembling arm and clutched his son's hand. "My child, death is like snuffing out a lamp. There is nothing worth mourning. Your father is a god transformation stage cultivator. You can sell my body to the corpse-driving sect, they buy at high prices." Then, the father took his last breath. The son, following his father's last wishes and, tearfully, handed over his father to the corpse-driving sect. The corpse-driving sect was shocked. "Your father clearly isn't dead, why did you bring him to us? His life signs ceased, it's a case of apparent death. Your father can still be saved." The corpse-driving sect sent a mortician who successfully revived the father. The son thanked the corpse-driving sect for their life-saving grace but was puzzled. "Don't you love dead bodies the most? Why didn't you pretend to be ignorant, accept my father, and instead revived him? Why do we drive corpses? Our philosophy at the corpse-driving sect is that the dead cannot be revived. But death doesn't imply the extinguishing of the lamp. We hope to use our hands to restore the brilliance of the deceased, so they may shine from life to death. It's for this reason that we strictly differentiate between the living and the dead, guaranteeing that the living are living and the dead are dead." Moved, the son presented a banner to the corpse-driving sect, the corpse-driving sect, miraculous life-saving. The performance ended amidst polite applause. Zhang Li pondered for a moment, then said to the head of the corpse-driving sect, "Next time you perform like this, charge for advertisement." Union sect was much better behaved this time. They simply organized a fashion show in comparatively conservative attire, exhibiting various styles highlighting feminine charm to the audience. At the very least, they dressed more conservatively than the people from the White Marsh Empire and the Worm race. Zhang Li suspected the Union sect was aiming to diversify and start selling clothes. The performance by the Body Incorporating sect, the Beast Controlling sect, and the White Marsh Empire revolved around the theme of harmony between humans and demons. Why would the Body Incorporating sect participate in such a theme? Someone in the audience was wondering. It made sense for the Beast Controlling sect and the White Marsh Empire, but they failed to see how this theme was related to the Body Incorporating sect. "I'm not sure. Perhaps because the Body Incorporating sect admires demon forms to comprehend their own laws, hence maintaining good relations with the demons," someone conjectured. Penglai Fairy Island, the Wei Dynasty, the Dream River Dynasty, and other major forces took turns performing from dawn till dusk, successfully rounding up all the performances. None of the performances were similar, each had its unique appeal, and left the audience spellbound. Ming Zhang watched it all and was amazed by Jojo's open-mindedness. The cultivators watching did not feel any fatigue and enjoyed every bit, constantly applauding. For them, the journey to the imperial palace seemed quite worthwhile. Being able to witness how a performance can result in transcendence must have substantial benefits towards their state of mind, although it wouldn't improve their cultivation. Still, improving one's state of mind is also a crucial part of cultivation. None of the major forces were willing to play by the rules, and each could conjure a magic trick. Zhongli watched, weary at heart. As the person in charge, Lu also felt the same. Both thought it would have been better to fight the heavenly demons instead. Next time let's have a rehearsal beforehand. If nothing else, we should at least know what these monsters and ghouls are planning to perform. It will help us to be mentally prepared. Lu nodded in agreement. He felt the emperor was quite right. 10 years ago, the Union sect was the only one causing trouble. Now, after 10 years, everyone was causing trouble. While their cultivation had not improved, their ability to cause trouble had. Straight off, it was too overwhelming even for a transcendence tribulation stage. On the outcome, the festival was a huge success. Everyone was joyful and satisfied with the celebrations. The festival concluded successfully, but for some people, this was just the beginning. After all, there was a 10-day holiday, and it would be a shame to not take the opportunity to have some fun, especially when it marked 300 years of Zhongli's reign. Zhongli felt that cultivators' joy was built on top of his suffering. As the human emperor, he had sacrificed too much. Zhongli decided to go for a walk, anywhere would do, as long as it was away from the imperial palace. The silent system then issued a new mission. Special mission posted. Find the fragments of the stairway to immortality.